members of this committee, if I am confirmed, I commit to you that I will work productively to support and defend the Constitution and this grand experiment of American democracy that has endured over these past 246 years.
Today was the first day, folks, of the Senate Judiciary Committee confirmation hearing for Supreme Court Justice nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. The committee chair, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, of course, opened the hearing with a message about the power behind Jackson's status as the first black woman ever nominated for the United States Supreme Court.
In its more than 230 years, the Supreme Court has had 115 justices. 108 have been white men. Just 2 justices have been men of color. Only 5 women have served on the court, and just 1 a woman of color. Not a single justice has been a black woman. You, Judge Jackson, can be the first. It's not easy being the first. Often you have to be the best, in some ways the bravest. Many are not prepared to face that kind of heat, that kind of scrutiny, that ordeal in the glare of the national spotlight. But your presence here today, your willingness to brave this process will give inspiration to millions of Americans who see themselves in you. As I mentioned to you, I was at the steps of the Supreme Court this morning to see the rally in support of you. There were so many young African-American women and law students there seeing your pursuit as part of their dream.
You heard Senator Dick Durbin there mention that rally at the Supreme Court. Women gathered outside of the Supreme Court today. Guys, roll that video. Before the hearing kicked off, setting the tone for what took place today. Also, of course, the hearing is going to continue tomorrow as well. We're going to play some of that in a second. Joining me now is Candace Kelly. She's legal analyst. Melanie Campbell, president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. Also, Glenda Carr, president and CEO of Higher Heights. Glad to have all 3 of you here. Let's start first of all, Melody. Women, different backgrounds, different colors out there today outside of the Supreme Court. Why was that important to begin today with women in front of the Supreme Court rallying for this judge?
Thank you, Roland. And it was really, the energy was really high today. And, with National Women's Law Center and She Will Rise and my girl on here, Glenda Carr, and Black Women's Leadership Collective, and so many heads of sororities. And then you also had, so it was black women led, which was really important, but also you had our allies, if you will, who showed up. And so the diversity that was there in not just race, but also gender. It was a lot of men out there. It was young, it was a lot of young people. And so I think what we recognize is this is what this woman brings to the bench. She has a lived experience as a black woman, and so people will say this is what diversity looks like. This is what's missing in the U.S. Supreme Court. And so that was exciting, but also we also sending a signal that we're watching. And we're not going to allow for her character to be assassinated. Do your jobs. We understand you have to do your jobs, and you maybe have to ask hard questions, but we would not stand by and have any of them tear her down.
Candace, when we look at the contrast, if you will, of this hearing and that of Thurgood Marshall in 1967, you had significant white supremacists who were doing all they can to keep him off of the bench. It is arguably the most contentious in American history. Now today, you get all of these white senators sitting here whining and complaining about, how difficult things have been for conservative nominees like Robert Bork and Clarence Thomas. But none of that had absolutely nothing to do with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Had nothing to do with Judge Jackson, and I think that was clear to everybody that they were going through a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder in terms of what happened with Kavanaugh, but that's a done deal. What was important was that this woman was making history, and we know that it was so important, especially when we talk about the timing of all of this, the fact that Clarence Thomas got sick on Friday and was still in the hospital. We know that the timing is very important, and that even though she won't change the court ideologically, it doesn't matter. She is there, and what she's doing is She's opening doors for people to see the possibility, even before her name was even on the table. When President Joe Biden said, I'm going to nominate a Black woman, people just they didn't understand. They had questions. They didn't realize, they didn't understand what was going on. That didn't happen for Amy Coney Barrett. That's because they could not conceive that a Black woman could be on the court. So today was such a historic day because we saw her sitting in that seat. We saw women march on Capitol Hill and just, be kind of a festival of, kind of dancing and understanding that this was important. And like what was just spoken, we are watching, and she is not going to be done the way that you have done people before. This is someone who's already gone through this process 3 times. This is nothing new. Judge Jackson knows that she's been under the Petri dish for her whole life. And I don't think that there's going to be very many surprises. I think what's most surprising to so many people is that, she's someone who's going to articulately and meticulously speak her mind and be confirmed, even with the shenanigans that were pulled by the Republicans today, especially Josh Hawley.
Glenda, it was interesting to sit there and listen. I mean, I'm all goodness. Yet Senator Mike Lee was talking about, will you look at the Constitution as it was written at the time and then how the public viewed it? And I'm sitting there going, you're going to hear me talk about this with Senator Amy Klobuchar. I'm going, Black people weren't Americans, couldn't vote. Women couldn't vote. So this whole idea of looking at the Constitution in its original form and how the public viewed it then, only white men mattered. They listened to just the crying and moaning of Senator Ted Cruz and the complaining. And I swear today was sort of like the second confirmation hearing of Brett Kavanaugh.
It was, the undertones that qualified Black women deal with every day in workplace, in the community, and clearly in the Senate hearing rooms, was offensive. There was a couple of times we pulled together, 9 Black women-led organizations under an umbrella called the Black Women's Leadership Collective, and we hosted a watch party here in DC. That's where I'm here. That's why my lighting's not great tonight, Roland. But we were all sitting around, and was like the undertones, and she sat there, as gracious as she can. I can't wait until she's able to articulate and be able to have a back to forth dialogue, to be able to call the question on their line of questioning and actually correct the record and give them a historical perspective, both from the history of our country and racism and sexism, but also a history on the Constitution and the law. The world was just introduced to her today. Tomorrow, she's going to be able to, I think, shine to really show why she is beyond qualified for this moment.
Looks like we've lost our Skype machine, so our other guests, we're going to pull them back up. The thing here that is so important. I mean, look, when you have these hearings, Glenda, look, the nominee can't show any emotion, and so we talk about judicial temperament. I mean, your first example of judicial temperament is to have to sit there and listen to the BS spewing out of some of these senators' mouths.
Yep, she sat there all day and moved her head over here. And so I certainly think her temperament, President Joe Biden's choice checks all the boxes. She's a coalition builder. She is qualified from an education perspective, from a lived experience perspective. She's been before the Senate this is her 4th time. She had to see Senator Lindsey Graham, and I'd love to hear Lindsey Graham set the tone of how he's going to question her when in fact he has already supported and voted for her in the past. Just shows you that they don't have a leg to stand on for the grounds of why they don't think she should be seated. And I certainly believe that, again, the Black women-led organizations and Black women across this country are going to call the question. If we don't, they keep saying they want this to be a fair trial, void of, unnecessary venom. Trust me, Black women are watching, and we're going to call the task. And particularly, these are our elected U.S. senators, and they certainly will be getting phone calls, emails, and tweets in these days following if this isn't a fair, transparent process. At the end of the day, they have to do their job. And we want a vetted Supreme Court justice, but it needs to be on her record. And this undertone of, the quality, her qualifications, we are not having it.
And then, of course, you, of course, had idiots like Senator Marsha Blackburn making her ridiculous comments about critical race theory. And I'm going, well, she just showing exactly who the hell she is.
Yep. I was actually in the room during that time. And just like I said, offended. And people are showing who they are. And we're living in some of the most racist, sexist times in our generation, Roland. And I think it's important for people to see, once and again, that even though we are outside of the, Trump era, is that the Trump era has created an opportunity for people to feel like they could stand in front, sit in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee and question someone based on race and sex.
Yeah, it was Melanie. As we listen to again, the various folks speak. I mean, you saw the contrast, frankly, between Democrats who were quite respectful of her accomplishments, and then of course you have Republicans who many of them were paying lip service to really who she is.
And in many ways, somewhat disrespectful, because you talked about the Kavanaugh hearing, and it was everything about what happened to the Republicans. But we're going to make sure that that we treat you fairly. And in some ways, that wasn't what was happening in real time. But she held her own, and she didn't let that affect her. And then, of course, her opening statement, reminded everybody, this is why she's here. And so I think tomorrow will be a test to see, was that rhetoric that we saw from some of the Republicans today going to carry over into being do their job properly, or will they try to use her as a political football tomorrow? And that's yet to be seen.
Let's play a little bit more of her comments from earlier today, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. That's video of the rally. Play the video of her. Press play.
And I take that responsibility and my duty to be independent very seriously. I decide cases from a neutral posture. I evaluate the facts, and I interpret and apply the law to the facts of the case before me without fear or favor, consistent with my judicial oath. I know that my role as a judge is a limited one, that the Constitution empowers me only to decide cases and controversies that are properly presented. And I know that my judicial role is further constrained by careful adherence to precedent. Now, in preparing for these hearings, you may have read some of my more than 570 written decisions, and you may have also noticed that my opinions tend to be on the long side. That is because I also believe in transparency, that people should know precisely what I think and the basis for my decision. And all of my professional experiences, including my work as a public defender and as a trial judge, have instilled in me the importance of having each litigant know that the judge in their case has heard them, whether or not their arguments prevail in court. During this hearing, I hope that you will see how much I love our country and the Constitution and the rights that make us free. I stand on the shoulders of so many who have come before me, including Judge Constance Baker Motley, who was the first African-American woman to be appointed to the federal bench and with whom I share a birthday. And like Judge Motley, I have dedicated my career to ensuring that the words engraved on the front of the Supreme Court building, "Equal justice under law," are a reality and not just an ideal. Thank you for this historic chance to join the highest court, to work with brilliant colleagues, to inspire future generations, and to ensure liberty and justice for all.
Now, today was pretty much, Melody, just the speechifying, if you will, of the United States senators. Tomorrow, you're really going to get into the questioning.
Yes, but I tell you, I could hear her opening remarks. It's just so powerful, and moving is not even the strongest word that I can come up with. I could just sit here and listen, and just what that historical moment, and she just brought it home, and she understands the magnitude of this moment. So I just wanted to say that. And tomorrow is day 2. Right? And so that's why we are continuing to organize, all of us, to make sure that, those who can show up. We're encouraging people to make phone calls, because by tomorrow will let us know if this is going to be fair and balanced. I think the Senator Durbin, in his role as chair, is going to do everything he can, and many of the colleagues. But I just hope that some of the rhetoric we heard today, and I'm not being partisan, just factual, from the Republicans, will come tomorrow with just asking the hard questions. Nothing wrong with that, but don't come for her and try to tear her down, so that you can lift up and get some votes out of that by attacking her character.
Again, Melody, Glenn Carr, I'm glad both of you are here. We're going to be looking out tomorrow to see what happens for day 2 of these confirmation hearings. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
All right. Thank you very much. Folks, also, let's talk about, earlier today, I got a chance to catch up with Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, who was on break from the Judiciary Committee. And here is our conversation about the first half of today's hearings. All right, Senator Klobuchar, let's get right to it. First day of the hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. So it was very interesting watching the morning session. I'm sorry, was this the Judge Jackson hearings, or was this Kavanaugh Part 2?
I could not believe the reference to all that. And I'm glad you said Part 2, because the Part 1 hearing was a pretty normal hearing. While I disagreed with Judge Kavanaugh, it had really nothing to do with the allegations that came out later. I was shocked that they dwelled on that. And I think that, in fact, there have been many hearings for judges of both parties that have been held in a dignified manner with presidents, Democratic presidents, Republican presidents. And what I think I loved about the Judge Jackson, is how she just let it all go, man. She was up there looking strong. Her family, incredible. I got to meet her parents. Both of them used to be teachers like my mom was, and they were something. And my favorite moment was actually when Senator Coons asked the judge's brother, "Are you surprised she's up here?" And he said, "Not at all, not at all." So despite all the garbage you're going to hear from people attacking her, the bottom line is she is strong. She's got a strong moral compass. She has more experience than 4 of the justices on the court right now coming into this. And she actually has more trial experience than any of the justices coming into this, except for Justice Sotomayor. So I'll put her up against any of my colleagues in their questioning tomorrow, and I know she's going to do a great job.
Well, I dare say it's also for someone like myself who reads history, who loves history. It's amazing how folks forgot. All of a sudden, contentious Supreme Court hearings began with Robert Bork. I just finished reading Will Haygood's book Showdown on the Thurgood Marshall hearings. I think that was a little contentious. Sherrilyn Ifill, of course, she also talked about the Supreme Court hearings of John Marshall Harlan II, who was a conservative, where they felt that he was not going to be conservative enough on Brown versus Board of Education. So I guess all of the conservative whining about how it's only been their Supreme Court nominees that have gotten tough hearings, I mean, I dare say, pick better people.
Well, also, I agree. Also, I have sat through so many judiciary hearings for other judges where I cannot believe the gauntlet that they have to go through, basically scorpion-like questions time and time again, especially in this last year since Joe Biden won the presidency. So, you know, but all I care about right now, Roland, is that this woman, Judge Jackson, she is more than up for it. And she has shown that in her hearings in the past for the Sentencing Commission, District Court, Circuit Court, got bipartisan support in all of them, shows she can take whatever questions are thrown at her. So I'm actually looking forward to it tomorrow. I also, go ahead.
Could you, one of the things I would love for you to speak to, I think it's really important for the public. It irks me to no end when I hear people say that Supreme Court justices or federal judges should look at the law based upon how the law was written at the time. And it was Senator Mike Lee who said, and I tweeted this because it was really getting on my nerves when he talked about how they should be interpreting the law based upon how the public at that time knew what it was. Well, first of all, at that time, you couldn't vote. I couldn't vote. So this notion that a Supreme Court justice must look at the Constitution in the way the public viewed it when it was written, other than white men, the rest of us are excluded.
Exactly. I made this point during Justice Gorsuch's hearing, taking literally some of the words in the Constitution with references to he and him and how the world changes over time. And that's why in my opening, which went right after Mike Lee, I made a point of saying, yes, you have to have respect. You look at precedent, of course, which this current court is ready to throw out, as it looks like from the argument. Roe v. Wade, well-established precedent, and has been willing to throw out the Voting Rights Act, a major portion of it, against all odds. They have done that. To me, they're the ones that are disrespecting much more current precedent. They're the ones that are legislating from the bench. And so this idea that it's just a static document that was written back in the horse and buggy days, and that you're supposed to then act like nothing's happened is ridiculous. What you do is you look at the plain language of laws or the Constitution, you look at the intent of when things were based, but then you also look at court precedent, you look at the effect it has in modern day. So my point today was Justice Breyer, who is a mentor to Judge Jackson. He said that it must be workable. The law must be workable to the people of today. So you have respect for the past, but you have an eye for the future when you make decisions. Otherwise, you're going to have some of these crazy decisions that we're seeing coming out of this court today. And my hope is that future Justice Jackson is going to be a ballast for that.
You also talked about it as well as another one of your colleagues, and that we have to deal with the reality that there have been 115 Supreme Court justices, and frankly, for the most part in American history, the decision was that only white men really can decide. And the fact of the matter is, if you are a woman, if you look at Sandra Day O'Connor, Elena Kagan, Justice Sotomayor, Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Jackson, if you are an African American, Thurgood Marshall, Clarence Thomas, Judge Jackson, perspectives, how we grew up, where we grew up, what we experienced, all plays a role in this. For her, being a public defender, being somebody who represented, as y'all talked about, low-income clients, all of those things matter when a person is deciding these cases. We simply can't have the elite of the elite who are, frankly, far removed from regular everyday life making these decisions. And so that to me is important to raise in these hearings.
Completely, Roland. I couldn't have said it better. I remembering back when Justice Sotomayor was up and she was criticized for talking about having empathy for people that came before her. That should be the very definition of a judge, that they understand and that their combined experiences make for a stronger court. And what you have in Judge Jackson is someone, as I noted, whose parents went to segregated schools. Not a lot of those other justices have had that experience. Someone whose mom had to basically work her way to help support her dad so he could go to law school. A lot of those justices did not have that experience. And you name dropped a bunch of those very well historically, the names of people, women, people of color who have served on the bench. But the bottom line is there are so few. There's 115 of these justices, and she's the first Black woman nominated. And when you're the first one, it's not easy. She's opening a lot of doors, as I noted today. And then the last thing I'd say is when you have those kinds of humbling, that's not a word, humbling experiences, I think it makes you a better judge, because you know who's on the side, who gets affected by these rulings. They're not just words on a page. It's someone who loses their health insurance, or someone who can't make their own health care decision because of it's something that the Supreme Court decides, or someone who can't vote or isn't allowed to vote because they're thrown off a voting roll. Those are real people that are on the receiving end of these decisions of the court. It's not just some marble building where it has no effect on real people. And that's what I love about her. She's a real person. When you meet her, she's a warm person. She is a humble person, and she's someone that gets it. And I think that's going to come out loud and clear in her questioning tomorrow.
Well, I think, again, it is so critically important and to have the perspective of, again, of various senators on there as well. And look, I had a lot of Black women who were texting me. You talked about how she sat there and as she listened. First of all, I'm just letting you know I couldn't do it, because if the moment Ted Cruz starts talking, trust me, my whole body language would shift.
Yeah. I'm just trying to picture you out there while that was going on. I'm picturing.
And I'm from Texas.
Over the table.
I'm from Texas, and trust me, I had the eye roll, everything. Trust me, she did an admirable job of just sitting there listening to Cruz and Holly. Judicial temperament, she gets an A+. I do not have judicial temperament. It wouldn't work.
Your job.
It wouldn't have worked. I couldn't work. Last question for you. We've already seen the attempts to say Judge Jackson holds dear and near pedophiles. I don't know what the hell Harley is talking about. I do hope Democrats are going to, when this nonsense comes out, fire back at Republicans and really, making it clear that you're not going to sit here and play games with this woman's record and her credibility with some of these nonsensical things that they already tried to bring up.
No, I mean, the fact, Senator Hawley himself has supported judges, one that he won in Missouri, that have downward departed on these kinds of cases. The fact, her brother was a police officer, her uncle, one a detective, one the police chief in Miami. In addition to her public defender experience, she understands how the criminal justice system works, and her rulings, which have been fair down the line, consistent with other judges. And yes, I think people are looking forward to hitting back at this with the facts tomorrow.
All right, Senator Klobuchar, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Yeah, very smart to slide in that Prince reference.
Oh, did you like that? I noticed that Mike Lee had name checked and name dropped Odysseus before me, and I thought I'm going with Prince.
Yeah, I think the public probably prefers the Prince reference more than anything that he says. So yeah.
All right.
Senator, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland.
All right, folks, gonna go to break. We come back. We're gonna talk with our panel about today's confirmation hearings and just some of the other nonsense we heard spewing from Republicans' mouths. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Chrisette Michelle.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, there was lots of comedy at today's hearing. One of the biggest jokesters was Senator Ted Cruz. Y'all want to see Stuck on Stupid? Listen to this.
Now, what should this hearing be and what should it not be? Well, you've heard a number of members on the Republican side of the aisle quite clear on what it should not be. This will not be a political circus. This will not be the kind of character smear that sadly our Democratic colleagues have gotten very good at. And it's important to note, a couple of years ago I was doing my weekly podcast and I was on with a noted liberal intellectual who made a comment something to the effect of, well, both sides do this. Both sides smear Supreme Court justices. And I was forced to laugh out loud and say, look, I understand that's a pretty good talking point. It just happens not to be true. It is only one side of the aisle, the Democratic aisle, that went so into the gutter with Judge Robert Bork that they invented a new verb, to bork someone. It is only one side of the aisle that with Justice Clarence Thomas was so reprehensible that, as the president who nominated him, President George Herbert Walker Bush, wrote at the time, quote, "What's happening to Clarence Thomas is just plain horrible. All the groups that tried to beat him up on abortion or affirmative action have now come out of the woodwork. They are trying to destroy a decent man. This is an ugly process, and one can see clearly why so many good people elect to stay out of public life." As Justice Thomas observed in that hearing.
Okay, well, what's so funny is like the people who came out against him on abortion and affirmative action, because they were right. They were right. Then, of course, you had the biggest whiner of them all from South Carolina. Here's Lindsey Graham. Check out what he had to say. All right, y'all let me know when y'all have Lindsey Graham. I'm going to bring in my panel right now. Crystal Knight, Democratic strategist, Dr. Umakongo Dabinga, professorial lecturer at the School of International Service, American University, Reverend Jeff Carr, founder of the Infinity Fellowship there in Nashville. Jeff, I'm going to start with you because, unfortunately, you have to be represented by truly one of the dumbest people in all the United States Senate, and there's a whole lot of competition with that fool Tommy Tuberville there. So Senator Marsha Blackburn, listen to this fool.
Supreme Court. You have praised the 1619 Project, which argues the U.S. is a fundamentally racist country, and you have made clear that you believe judges must consider critical race theory when deciding how to sentence criminal defendants. Is it your personal hidden agenda to incorporate critical race theory into our legal system? These are answers that the American people need to know. So we are going to attempt to pack the Supreme Court. You have praised the
1619 Project? Really? Get your dumb ass out of here, Blackburn.
Hey, I told you, I said at the beginning of the year that Ted Cruz was perhaps the most brilliant comedian that we've ever come across. And he's proven it over and over again. You can't take him seriously. You have to take him seriously when we talk about voting. But Ted Cruz, Marsha Blackburn, people here, they do not take them seriously. It's just that their districts are so gerrymandered that they have an opportunity to remain in power. Personally, I hate confirmation hearings. As someone who's been on city boards, my wife is on a city board now, wherever you get to in confirmation hearings, something always comes up, and it's something that irks me that Bella Gesia Howell said. She said, never explain yourself. Your friends don't need it. Your enemies won't believe it. But you're in a space where you also manifest what Plato said. Plato said that one of the penalties of refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. So here we have Sister Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is the picture of intellect, who is the picture of class, who is the picture of experience, who takes it on herself to write 570 opinions that she didn't have to write to explain where she stood. She is a picture-perfect candidate who is more qualified, not only than everybody sitting in that space in judgment, but every single person sitting on the Supreme Court now. And yet she has to explain herself. So what I'm saying is this. We have an opportunity now with all the support that's coming from around the world for Sister Jackson. We have an opportunity to put her on that bench. And what I love most about her is her demeanor and how she is approaching this space. She is manifesting a saying that I tell people every single week. When they try to bite her and they try to bait her, and you hear Blackburn bringing up the 1619 Project, she, inside her mind, I can hear her saying the saying, I decline your invitation to a lower vibration. So go, Sister Jackson, go.
I just sit there, Crystal, and I'm listening to these fools. And again, they're talking about, how all of this started because of these radical judges in the 60s and 70s. Really what they were complaining about are civil rights laws.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I love what Carr just stated, and I also want to just say as a native Tennessean that I fully agree with his point that folks across the state of Tennessee understand who Marsha Blackburn is. We knew who she was when she was, at the state level, at the congressional level, and now at the Senate level. And so I just wanted to affirm that point. But also, just Ketanji's opening today, it was very powerful in that she really spoke to not only her pedigree, but her history on the court, or serving rather, her history serving, and then what she would offer, not only to the seat, but also what she offers as representation for Black women across this country that many people likely aspire to only serve at the Supreme Court level. But I also thought what was interesting, particularly, was Lindsey Graham's opening in that, this would not be a confirmation hearing where people would ask about her religious background. This would not be a confirmation hearing where people would ask about things in her past. And what he was really trying to do was juxtapose or compare what happened during the Kavanaugh hearings as if Kavanaugh was vilified in that, to suggest that she would not be. And so it would be interesting as we get into day 2 and the days to come to see exactly what these same Republicans have stated that they would not do if they'll actually do it. Because a lot of times, we hear what they say, but we also see what they do.
Let's you spoke of what Graham said. Let's play that.
The media will be your biggest cheerleader. They're in your camp. They have every right to pick who they want to pick. There won't be this constant attack on you like Judge Kavanaugh and other conservative judicial appointments. There won't be any questioning of where you go to church, what kind of groups you're in church, how you decide to raise your kids, what you believe in, how you believe in God. Nobody's going to do that to you. And that's a good thing. So you're the beneficiary of a lot. You're the beneficiary of Republican nominees having their life turned upside down. And it didn't work. So I'm hoping that we can have a hearing that's respectful, that's informative, that's challenging. And President Biden has every right to pick who he'd like to pick. That comes with winning the White House. And I've been very inclined to support the picks of people that I would not have chosen. But this is a new game for the Supreme Court. And this game is particularly disturbing to me.
Here is what John Ossoff, Senator John Ossoff, had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Grassley, Judge Jackson. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to your family. Congratulations to your family. Congratulations to you for your nomination, and welcome back to the Judiciary Committee. I engage in these proceedings with deep respect for the responsibility that the Senate has to advise and consent on the lifetime appointment of a Supreme Court justice who would be responsible for interpreting and applying constitutional and statutory law in the most complex and contested and nationally significant cases. The Constitution was a groundbreaking document when written, and still by today's standards as amended, considering the tyranny that prevails in much of the world. Its guarantees of liberty and privacy and due process are exceptional as a governing document. Often in our history, it has fallen to the court through its decisions to ensure the enforcement of those guarantees. Yet our Constitution's guarantees of individual rights and equal protection under the law remain too often and for too many unfulfilled. For any colleagues who doubt this, I remind them of Ahmaud Arbery's murder in Glenn County, Georgia, just 2 years ago, when a young black man was shot dead in cold blood on camera in the street, and the local authorities buried the case and looked the other way. Only a massive civil rights mobilization pressured state and eventually federal prosecutors to act. For any colleagues who doubt that those promises remain unfulfilled to too many, I remind them that in my state you can predict how long someone must wait to vote by where they live and the color of their skin. In practice, the promises made in the plain text of our Constitution are still too often broken for too many of our fellow Americans. And so the court remains essential to that national process of becoming in real life what America is in text. Today's hearing, Judge Jackson, is evidence that this process continues, and above all, a testament to you personally, that in a nation still striving to transcend the legacies of slavery and segregation and institutionalized racism, through your brilliance and resilience and hard work, you have already rendered great service to the nation as a federal judge. And
now let's hear from Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. This is what he had to say in today's hearing.
For the first time in history.
Had such great questions. I could not stop being just joyous that you were sitting in my office, and I couldn't stop bringing up to you the historical nature of this. Forgive me, I grew up in a small black church where I was taught to make a joyous noise unto the Lord. And this is not a normal day for America. We have never had this moment before. And I just want to talk about the joy. I know tomorrow in the coming hearings we're going to have tough, hard questions, but please let me just acknowledge the fact that this is not normal. It's never happened before. The Senate is poised right now to break another barrier. We are on the precipice of shattering another ceiling, another glass ceiling. It's a sign that we as a country are continuing to rise to our collective cherished highest ideals.
Well, Makongo, I think that is important what Senator Booker said. I just finished reading Will Haygood's book, Showdown, on the nomination battle of Thurgood Marshall, and how it was so contentious and it was so difficult. And so we cannot just overstate what it means to be alive in this time, to actually see history before our very eyes.
Man, it's just beautiful, man. I mean, to see what's happening. And I'm sorry, the most beautiful picture of the day was just when they shot over to her parents, right, who lived through everything you were talking about before with Thurgood Marshall and everything. And to be able to see that with their own child, I mean, that was my biggest takeaway from the day. And then to see, yeah, I mean, come on, man. That just gets me, you know? And then to see her and everything that she represents. And I love the fact that even though people have made so much of a stink over her being a black woman, being nominated, that she's not afraid to sit there in her blackness, to talk about the people who came before her, and to talk about the inspiration she can be for not only future black children, but all people across America. She embraces the moment to sit there with a nominee who has, hair that looks like mine and looks like my daughter's. It's amazing. Now, to these Republicans, let's be mindful of the fact that they made a stink over Judge Sonia Sotomayor making the comment about a wise Latina. These guys are full of nonsense. So when they bring up Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh, hey, can we talk about that there were possible sexual assault accusations here? Can we talk about how the FBI botched the investigation into Brett Kavanaugh so they can expedite this process? These are kind of like real things you want to bring up if you want to make comparisons. When you're talking to Senator Klobuchar and you said this was the Kavanaugh hearing part 2, they are showing that they are petty and they are never going to let this go. And so I support everything that was said in the panel before us with Sister Melanie Campbell and your other guests when they were talking about how black women are going to make sure that nothing goes down to mess around with this hearing. But I got news for everybody too. Brothers ain't taking it either. We are working together as a community to make sure that nothing ignorant comes her way. We're going to be that barrier, that force field, just to make sure that she can do her thing, man. Because her whole image, it was like Dave Chappelle, like when Keeping It Real goes wrong, like she was just waiting to like kind of snap at folks, but she had to just keep that composure the whole time. And like you said, Roland, I couldn't do it, man. I'd have been all across that table, but it's just a proud day for our community. It's a proud day for the country. And I can't wait for this confirmation to be over so we can just say Justice Ketanji Onika Brown Jackson.
So you're gonna put the whole Gutman name out there.
The whole joint.
The whole Gutman name. It was also, I think, when you look at what was said and you look at just this whole thing that really jumped out at me, dealing with the issue of race. The elephant in the room. And Crystal, you had individuals, again, Democrats, who, being honest, who talked about the reality of Jim Crow, who talked about what that meant and this point that we're in. And then again, to listen to Republicans act as if, oh my goodness, we've had, like, it was Mike Lee who said, we had these men who were picked by God to be able to be there to write the Constitution. I'm going, yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff you want to skip over, huh?
Right. I mean, and it's funny that people, love to quote the Constitution, and the Constitution, as it was written, it was not inclusive of women. It was not inclusive of black people. It was written with white men in mind. And so when people quote what the founders meant, what the Constitution says, I always say, well, the Constitution didn't include me. And if I'm talking to a person of color, it didn't include you either. And so people love to use that. They also love to weaponize, religion in the name of politics. And, even what Lindsey Graham stated in his speech or his opening statements, it was really ridiculous. But I think even more than that, the story today was really about the rally that was held on the steps of the Supreme Court by a number of black coalitions, a number of black women who showed up in support of Justice, or the future Justice Brown Jackson. And I think that that's what's really the important thing, and that should not be lost on us, that there are women who are going to show up every single day on the steps of the Supreme Court to show their support for her. And this is what this movement needs right now. This is what she deserves. This is what she needs in order to show the senators that are sitting on this committee, on this Senate Confirmation Committee, that there is support for her. There is a large coalition of people who believe in her. Not only does she have the pedigree, which really should not even be a question at this point, but that there's a coalition pushing aggressively not only silently, but in your face saying she should not be denied this seat because America deserves parity on the court. We talk about the inclusivity, we talk about the diversity of this country, but we also have a court that has historically not represented every person in America. And so when I think about, having her nomination be historic, we need her to be confirmed. We need to push not only as Black people, not only as Black women, but as a country, because if we really care about making sure that this country is diverse, if we really care about making sure every voice is heard, then we need equal representation. And it begins here. It doesn't end here, but it begins by confirming her.
And of course, you had these powerful words by one of the members, a United States Senator, a woman, a Democrat. Listen.
For 233 years, the individual making decisions that have altered the course of this country have almost exclusively been white men. It's pretty remarkable when you consider the power that this court has and the historical lack of diversity of the people who exercise that power, the justices. But instead of celebrating the long overdue diversity Judge Jackson would bring to the court, some of my Republican colleagues and public figures have attempted to undermine your qualifications through their pejorative use of the term affirmative action. And they have implied you were solely nominated due to your race and not for other factors. Apparently, some have even claimed that you need to show your LSAT scores to determine whether you are a top legal mind. This is incredibly offensive and condescending. Let me be clear. Your nomination is not about filling a quota. It is about time. It's about time that we have a highly qualified, highly accomplished Black woman on the Supreme Court. It's about time our highest court better reflects the country it serves. It's about time that Black women and girls across the country can finally see themselves who look like them sitting on the highest court, making decisions that will impact their lives. And they will know that it is possible for them to do the same. One cannot overstate the importance of representation. Your experiences and your background as a trial judge, a public defender, a mother, a Black woman, and so much more provide you with a uniquely different perspective than any of the 8 other justices on the court.
That was really important that the Senator Hirono made, Jeff, and it puts into context, again, the attacks on her, but it also shows you how white fear works in this country. Because the reality is, forget all that crap that Graham said and Cruz said about, question your church, things along those lines. Well, because those are fundamental issues when you're dealing with right-wing, conservative, batshit crazy evangelicals. Sure. It's important to ask those issues. I would dare say to any Republican, if you're complaining about a Robert Bork being appointed or you're complaining about a Brett Kavanaugh, why don't you pick your nominees better? And why don't you do that as opposed to whining and complaining, again, about those attacks. But what it also is, again, dealing with what we have to do with being Black in this country. You got to be twice as good. You got to be perfect. You got to be impeccable. You can't have any blemishes because we don't simply get we don't get those chances often. So therefore, it has to be perfect because you got to see the impedes whiteness.
Yes, yes, and Roland, you've got a book on it. It's White Fear. But we also look at this thing in context, and we hear the language that is being spoken by people who are gearing up for a battle. They're gearing up for a battle that they're going to lose, and yet that is not stopping them. As Sister Crystal, as Brother Omekongo have definitely expounded on today, they're speaking coded language to their base. I was driving in today and I switched over from the hearing and decided to listen to a little bit of right-wing conservative radio. I was able to get a small clip of the philosophy that they're going to advance in between the inordinate amount of erectile dysfunction commercials that play on that station for some reason. And what they were saying was in line with what Senator Josh Hawley was saying. And they were trying to point to this myth that somehow she has enabled pedophiles and child molesters. We're seeing that being telegraphed right now, so we know that's coming. We know it's absolutely false. But again, are we talking to America? Are we talking about fairness? Or are we talking to the base? And these people are talking to the base. They're talking to a base that is insane, that is completely out of touch with logic. If we hear this coded language that says, let's go back to interpreting the Constitution as it was originally written by the people who originally wrote them, we're talking about living in a past that no longer exists. Scientifically, the universe is hurtling forward at 750,000 miles per hour and expanding outward. If you simply stand still, that means you're going backwards, and it's impossible in the law of physics to go backwards. We are expanding, we are growing. But if you want to go back, we can go back to 1776, when medical doctors didn't even have degrees, but they were practicing folk medicine and putting leeches on people. The number one drug that people were using were opium and mercury. We're not doing that anymore. And yes, we were property when the Constitution was written. So guess what? Whether you want to look back or look forward, the universe is moving forward, and so are we. And as Dr. Dibinga said, we are supporting this sister on every single front, man, woman, and child. And this is a moment in history that we are going to seize, and we're going to be able to look back and celebrate it in the future.
Hey fam, Patrol Grooming is a black-owned men's grooming company that delivers on this promise every day to men everywhere. Everything we do, every product we make is designed to help you to present your best self. It's a promise they've kept since 1991 when they first introduced the Bump Patrol brand, the #1 men's product for a smooth, bump-free shave and silky skin. Millions of customers count on their exceptional skincare products, which can be found at more than 30,000 retail stores in more than 50 countries around the world. Now you can have exceptional beard and skincare products that are as unique as you. Fellas, as we prepare to head back out into the world as COVID restrictions are being lifted, it's time to get our groove back. You can visit patrolgrooming.com to order a Patrol Grooming box, and do this, use the discount code #Roland30. That's #ROLAND30 for a 30% discount at the checkout. We appreciate Patrol Grooming being a partner with us here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. All right, folks, second day of the city confirmation hearing for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. They're in recess. She testified for more than 9 hours today. They will come back for more questioning. It was quite a busy day. As usual, you had, nonsense coming from folks like Senator Lindsey Graham, as well as folks like Ted Cruz. And so we're going to show you some of what took place today. You want to see a meltdown? Look at this chief whiner, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Just, oh my God, the left, they were targeting Judge Childs. Okay, another black woman from South Carolina who's being considered. He hasn't gotten over it. Check out this wimp.
What is your judicial philosophy?
So I have a methodology that I use in my cases in order to ensure that I am ruling impartially, and that...
So your judicial philosophy is to rule impartially?
No, my judicial philosophy is to rule impartially and to rule consistent with the limitations on my authority as a judge. And so my methodology actually helps me to do that in every case.
So you wouldn't say that you're an activist judge?
I would not say that.
Okay. So we'll have 20 minutes more later on, but here's what I would say. That every group that wants to pack the court, that believes this court is a bunch of right-wing nuts that are going to destroy America, that consider the Constitution trash, all wanted you picked. And this is all I can say, is the fact that so many of these left-wing radical groups that would destroy the law as we know it declared war on Michelle Childs and supported you is problematic for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Let me mention a few points here. Congressman Jim Clyburn was a strong supporter of Michelle Childs, and now I believe he is publicly supporting your nomination And Michelle Childs has been nominated by President Biden to be a circuit judge, and she will be considered by this committee as quickly as possible. On the issue of Guantanamo, there are currently 39 Guantanamo detainees remaining. The annual budget for Guantanamo is $540 million per year, which means each of these detainees is being held at the expense of $12 or $13 million per year. If they would be incarcerated at Florence, Colorado, the Supermax prison, federal prison, the amount would be dramatically less. Since 9/11, nearly 1,000 convicted in the United States on terrorism charges. Since 2009, with the beginning of the Obama administration, the recidivism rate of the Guantanamo detainees released is 5%.
Mr. Chairman, according to the Director of National Intelligence, is 31%. Somebody is wrong here. If you're going to talk about what I said, I'm going to respond to what you said. If we close Gitmo and move them to Colorado, do you support indefinite detention under the law of war for these detainees?
I would just say I'm giving the facts. And
The answer is no.
I want to make sure that it's clear. The 31% you referred to goes back to the year 2009? 2000.
What does it matter when it goes back to? We had them and they got loose and they started killing people.
Well, I could just say that...
if you're one of the people killed in 2005, does it matter to you when we release them?
Suggest that a president of your own party released him in...
I'm suggesting the system has failed miserably, and advocates to change this system, like she was advocating, would destroy our ability to protect this country. We're at war. We're not fighting a crime. This is not some passage of time event. As long as they're dangerous, I hope they all die in jail if they're going to go back and kill Americans. It won't bother me one bit if 39 of them die in prison. That's a better outcome than letting them go. And if it costs $500 million to keep them in jail, keep them in jail, because they're going to go back to the fight. Look at the friggin' Afghan government. It's made up of former detainees at Gitmo. This whole thing by the left about this war ain't working.
Let me also note that Larry Thompson, who served as Deputy Attorney General under President George W. Bush, Oren Kerr, Special Counsel, Viet Den, who served as Assistant Attorney General for Legal Policy in the George W. Bush administration, John Bellinger, and former D.C. Circuit Judge, Solicitor General, and Independent Counsel Ken Starr were also prominent conservative lawyers signing a letter defending attorneys who represented Guantanamo Bay detainees. I don't believe that we should associate that activity as being inconsistent with our constitutional values.
That's called shut the hell up. All right, then of course we really had the stuck on stupid person known as Josh Hawley, okay, who just got schooled by Judge Brown Jackson. Watch this train wreck.
I've described the videos that we have. You say earlier in the case, you talk about how heinous these crimes are, and you describe them to your credit. You describe how heinous it is to your credit, and yet here you are giving him 3 months and apologizing to him and saying you feel sorry for the anguish it's caused him, and also saying you think that sex offenders are truly shunned in our society. So just talk about that. Help me understand. I mean, is he a victim? Is that your view here? Is that why you said this? Is that what you meant by it?
Senator, I again don't have the entire record. I remember in that particular case, I considered it to be unusual, in part for the reasons that I described. I remember in that case that defense counsel was arguing for probation, in part because he argued that here we had a very young man, just graduated from high school. He presented all of his diplomas and certificates and the things that he had done, and argued, consistent with what I was seeing in the record, that this particular defendant had gotten into this in a way that was, I thought, inconsistent with some of the other cases that I had seen. Part of what a judge is doing, as required by Congress, is thinking about this case, thinking about unwarranted sentencing disparities, that's in the statute, other cases, other determinations that a judge may have made about this, I don't remember in detail this particular case, but I do recall it being unusual. And so my only point to you is that judges are doing the work of assessing in each case a number of factors that are set forward by Congress, all against the backdrop of heinous criminal behavior. But the guidelines are no longer mandatory. Congress has not corrected, as you would say, the Supreme Court's determination about that. Justice Scalia's decision that the guidelines are not mandatory. Congress has not said that. And Congress has given judges factors to consider. This, in my view, was an unusual case that had a number of factors that the defendant was pointing out, that the government was pointing out, that the probation office was pointing out. And I sent this 18-year-old to 3 months in federal prison under circumstances that were presented in this case because I wanted him to understand that what he had done was harmful, that what he had done was unlawful, that what he had done violated the law and needed to be punished, not only by prison, but also by all of the other things that the law requires of a judge who is sentencing in this area.
But Judge, with all due respect, and I'm telling you what, I'll be direct with you. I am questioning your discretion and your judgment. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not questioning you as a person.
Then, of course, we have, let me just say it, the asshole of the United States Senate. And that's Ted Cruz of Texas, my native state. Yes, the show's called Roland Martin Unfiltered, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. And that's exactly what he is. If y'all want to see stupid, listen to this fool talk about critical race theory.
I've never studied critical race theory, and I've never used it. It doesn't come up in the work that I do as a judge.
So with respect, I find that a curious statement because you gave a speech in April of 2015 at the University of Chicago in which you described the job you do as a judge. And you said sentencing is just plain interesting because it melds together myriad types of law, criminal law, and of course constitutional law, critical race theory. So you described in a speech to a law school what you were doing as critical race theory. And so I guess I would ask, what did you mean by that when you gave that speech?
With respect, Senator, the quote that you are mentioning there was about sentencing policy. It was not about sentencing. I was talking about the policy determinations of bodies like the Sentencing Commission when they look at a laundry list of various academic subjects as they consider what the policy should be.
Okay, but you were vice chair of the Sentencing Commission, so let me ask again, what did you mean by, because that was an official responsibility of yours, what did you mean by what you were doing was critical race?
What I meant was that there are a number of, that slide does not show the entire laundry list of different academic disciplines that I said relate to sentencing policy, but none of that relates to what I do as a judge.
So, Judge Jackson, all of us will agree that no one should be discriminated against because of race. When you just testified a minute ago that you didn't know if critical race theory was taught in K through 12, I will confess I find that statement a little hard to reconcile with the public record, because if you look at the Georgetown Day School's curriculum, it is filled and overflowing with critical race theory. That among the books that are either assigned or recommended, they include Critical Race Theory, an introduction. They include The End of Policing, an advocacy for abolishing police. They include How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. They include literally stacks and stacks of books, and I'll tell you two of the ones that were most stunning. They include a book called Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram Kendi. And there are portions of this book that I find really quite remarkable. One portion of the book says babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There is no neutrality. Another portion of the book, they recommend to babies confess when being racist. Now, this is a book that is taught at Georgetown Day School to students in pre-K through second grade, so 4 through 7 years old. Do you agree with this book that is being taught with kids that babies are racist?
Senator, I do not believe that any child should be made to feel as though they are racist or though they are not valued or though they are less than, that they are victims, that they are oppressors. I don't believe in any of that. But what I will say is that when you asked me whether or not this was taught in schools, critical race theory, my understanding is that critical race theory as an academic theory is taught in law schools, and to the extent that you were asking the question, I understood you to be addressing public schools. Georgetown Day School, just like the religious school that Justice Barrett was on the board of, is a private school.
Okay, so you agree critical race theory is taught at Georgetown Day School?
I don't know, because the board is not, the board does not control the curriculum. The board does not focus on that. That's not what we do as board members, so I'm actually not sure.
Well,
I can't listen to any more of these fools. I mean, I could play more clips, but I mean, really, y'all are just witnessing just how dumb we are dealing with people who are on the United States, in the United States Senate, on the Judiciary Committee, in terms of what their thinking is, how they operate. It makes no sense whatsoever. All right, let's go to my esteemed legal panel. We've assembled y'all. He leads the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under Law. Glad to have Damon Hewitt back on the show. Damon, glad to see you here. Also on the show is Tanya Washington Hicks, professor at Georgia State University College of Law. Danielle Holly Walker, Dean and Professor of Law, Howard University School of Law. Joan Bullock, Dean and Professor of Law at Texas Southern University. Sorry, Tennessee, that's called the real TSU. I'm from Houston, I'm partial, so sorry. I know Glenda Glover, you don't like that at Tennessee State, but it's all good. All right, so let's get right into this. Houstonians go first. So Joan, I'll start with you. I mean, it had to, you had to sit here and be laughing as you witnessed these folks try to come up with all kind of nonsense, throwing all kind of things out that really made no sense whatsoever. And Judge Brown Jackson doing her best not to laugh in their faces.
I have to tell you first that I am just very much impressed with her composure. She had extreme poise in answering the questions, and she did not take the bait at all in terms of losing that composure, nor getting into legal opinions and to her particular opinions on a particular subject. So I thought she did extremely well, and more importantly, her training as a lawyer and as a jurist was on full display. So the more they attacked her, the more she showed that she is the appropriate nominee.
This just desire, Danielle, to try to invoke critical race theory into everything, and he's bringing up these books, and she just definitely said, I'm sorry, you know that's a private school, and you were discussing public school. Those are two different things.
Yeah, I mean, has really nothing to do with her role as a judge or as a potential justice on the Supreme Court. And I think the idea that a sitting judge would be paying attention to books that are in a private school that she sits on the board of is really ridiculous. But we know what these attacks are really about, which is to try to make the assertion that Black lawyers, Black judges, even judges who are going to be on the Supreme Court are somehow intertwined with critical race theory, which in itself is a false assumption. And I think that, Senator Cruz, in asking questions, particularly, it was a deeply offensive, line of questioning. And obviously, Judge Jackson that's why we ask about judicial temperament, right? Most of us would not be able to withstand what she has withstood over the last day and will withstand tomorrow. And I think she's displayed tremendous amounts of patience. The clip you showed with Senator Hawley was also one where she needed to really show off her judicial temperament, because it's something that most of us would not be able to do.
Damon, when we look at, again, what the role here is, you have this attempt to play gotcha. But the one that really I thought was just the most embarrassing was Lindsey Graham, who just can't get over the fact that President Joe Biden did not pick Judge Michelle Childs. And he was crying yesterday, oh, she would have gotten 60 votes and I would have supported her and Senator Tim Scott. Yeah, I also recall Senator Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott saying they were going to pass the George Floyd Justice Act.
Right, exactly. And look, 60 votes isn't 100 votes, and all she really needs is 50, right? Just to be frank and honest. And I think what Senator Graham may be worried about is, number one, not getting his way to his preferred person, and also the fact that on this one we're going to win, right? This nominee will be confirmed. I have every confidence of that. But the most important thing is that so much of what he said, what Senator Cruz said, what Senator Hawley said, was not even actually about this nominee. It was actually about some other culture war that tends to be dragged out whenever folks feel like they're getting behind in the polls, or when demographic shift is threatening their power, their majority. This is about a culture war. It's not about this highly qualified nominee. And I have to tell you, her temperament, as Danielle Holly Walker said, is really on point. But also, woe betide those who appear before her who come with nonsense, right? Whether it be on the D.C. Circuit or the Supreme Court, because she is about the law, she is about the facts, and if anything, she's about rigor and discipline, not nonsense.
But Tanya, we must pay attention to the line of questioning, because really what we're dealing with, and my book drops in September, is white fear. I mean, these are white folks who cannot handle that non-white men are now in positions of power.
Yes. I mean, her very presence in that space, right, is an affront to white supremacy, which signals that maleness and whiteness enjoy primacy. And she's gracious, she's articulate. What she delivered today was a master class on what it means to be a judge, to be disciplined in your thinking, to be reasoned in your approach. Her temperament was gracious and patient. She listened to the questions, she responded to them.
Looks like her Skype froze.
Fear.
Okay, there we go.
The fear that you referenced was also on full display. I mean, when someone storms out of a proceeding because they don't get the reaction they are seeking, I mean, that's irresponsible and behavior that's unbecoming of a senator.
Well, and look, the fact of the matter is, Democrats have 50 votes. Look, Damon, I know you said, hey, she's going to get it confirmed. You got two special children in Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, so Lord knows what happens there. You may very well have anywhere from 3 to 5 Republicans who might support her: Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, possibly Rob Portman, could be Toomey from Pennsylvania. But really what we have here is this need to try to score points, and again, position her as being some strange individual. Joan, what really cracked me up the most was trying to attack her for the briefs dealing with Guantanamo Bay, and then you had Senator Hirono, who was just masterful by saying, weren't there 20 former federal judges who asked you to write that, and they were appointed by Republicans and Democrats? And it was sort of like, yeah, they didn't mention that. And then you saw the attempt with Ted Cruz with the partial quote. You know, whenever you see critical race theory, boldface, ... you always got to ask, well, what comes after the ... And so we see exactly what's going on here, wanting to make her out to be this left wing, far left loon, when that's actually not the case.
That's right. I mean, they're just trying to get her dirty. They're trying to get some airtime with talking points. I was stunned that Senator Hawley, did not interrupt this nominee, this witness, so to speak, at this hearing for probably 2 straight minutes. And I think it was indicative of her bearing. I think she obviously took command of that interaction without question. And I think that's a harbinger of what she'll do on this bench. Because look, the Supreme Court is not theater, but let's be honest, there's a little bit of theater component, right, in terms of when you're witnessing, right? And it's really about the intellectual dialogue and the exchange and how we actually can funnel, whether it be a litigant before you, or whether it be other judges on that bench, especially a 9-person bench like the Supreme Court, how you can guide the conversation to the relevant points, not to points that are distractions or points that are just trying to buttress an outcome determinative view. Points that are really about the matters at hand, the matters that matter to Black folks in America, the matters that matter to all folks in America, not some type of culture war that some of these folks are trying to propagate.
Joan?
I think she's done a wonderful job in showing that it's all about her record. It's not about the nonsense. And that is what the others were trying to distract from her record. Her record is about, as on the appellate level, is about the record before her, about the data that has been provided, and her making decisions based upon that record. And on the trial level, she showed how the humanity that comes into understanding and interpreting the law or applying the law against someone, as in that one case with the 18-year-old in the child pornography case. It's a situation where she's looking at all the factors. It's not about theater. It's about people's lives. And and she was very, very good at staying with her record. And that is what this hearing is all about. It's about her record and what she was able to demonstrate as to her being a jurist, someone who is well capable of being at the next Supreme Court justice.
Hold tight 1 second. Let's go live to the hearing room right now. Look like you've got Senator Kennedy of Louisiana. Guys, go live, please.
My staff just says we just got to.
Let's hear what he got to say.
So I'm very upset. I joined Ted Cruz.
Good.
Mr. Chairman.
That's an alliance that's well known.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I do think it's significant. We've had now referenced some pre-sentence reports, and we've got this material that references recommendations made by the Office of Adult Probation and Parole.
Reports.
Well, okay, but we've got critical information that is contained within them. The recommendation made by the Office of Adult Probation and Parole in these cases is something that's drawn from the pre-sentence report. It seems to me that if we're going to have a jot-for-jot selective incorporation of information in there, we ought to have access to the whole report. So I respectfully request that we be given access to these reports. They've been made now by a member of the committee in reliance on information that we haven't had access to, and I think we need to be given those. You can't.
Senator, I'd like to draw this to a conclusion. I can tell you what I know. And
well, so would I.
More. And here's the point. Most of this information was published in the Washington Post 5 days ago, all right? This is not confidential information. When the Hawley attack on the judge started, we requested more information, the White House did, and then shared it with us within the day, and you now have the same copy that we have. End of story.
Is it fair for you to characterize Senator Hawley's questions or the questions raised by any of us as an attack? It's not a personal attack. This is we've raised a legitimate question regarding sentencing, regarding the most heinous crimes imaginable.
Oh, come on.
So these are legitimate questions, Mr. Chairman. Don't call them attacks.
Well, I can just tell you, I have characterized them as attacks and other things as well. I think it's pretty clear what's going on here, and now you have all the information we have.
So Mr. Chairman, for example, in the questioning about the Hawkins case, Judge Jackson said she relied on the factors, relied on probation's recommendation. We just found out in what you just handed us that in the Hawkins case, the probation office recommended 18 months, and Judge Jackson only sentenced him to 3 months. That's you can get more than that almost for a speeding ticket. And
Senator,
this committee, given that she raised it as the basis for her sentence, it is highly relevant to the committee's analysis to see what the pre-sentence report says. Why did the probation office recommend 18 months and she only sentenced to 3 months?
March 19th, Washington Post. In the case of U.S. versus Hawkins, a sex offender had multiple images of child porn over 18. Sentencing guidelines called for sentence up to 10 years. Judge Jackson sentenced the perpetrator to only 3 months in prison.
Those facts we knew. It's the probation recommendation. We don't dispute that the guidelines said 10 years and she sentenced him to 3 months.
Sorry, I didn't finish reading it. The government and probation both recommended sentences well below the guidelines. The government recommended 24 months, probation recommended 18 months, and defense recommended 1 day. I'm telling you, it was published in a newspaper. Now,
well, I can't help what is leaked to the newspaper or not. This committee, you keep referencing discovery. This is not litigation. This is a committee of the United States Senate where both sides of the aisle have a right to access to the record, and we're carrying out our constitutional duty of advice and consent.
I will tell you this, for some reason your side didn't request the information.
But how would we know to request? So I'm hereby requesting all other information you magically have that you haven't told us you have and you're not sharing with the other side.
So noted, for the record. We'll continue with the questioning now.
And
Senator
we're requesting
Cotton.
the pre-sentence reports in particular, which are highly relevant to the issues before
Senator
this
Cotton,
committee.
please proceed. We don't have any pre-sentence reports.
Judge, I'd like to talk about crime. In 2019, there were about 16,000.
Y'all monitor that idiot from Arkansas, because you know he's just gonna he's probably the most heinous and the closest to being a white supremacist out of anybody. If you look at his record, and trust me, he makes Jeff Sessions look like a civil rights activist. That's how heinous Tom Cotton is of Arkansas. Danielle, I want to go to you. They're making a huge deal out of this one particular case when Senator Hirono walked through how many other judges confirmed literally sentence folks downward from what was actually recommended by prosecutors.
Yeah, and I have to say this for the record. This is a dangerous conspiracy theory. The idea, this is a QAnon conspiracy theory, the idea that Judge Jackson, who has more judicial experience than the last 4 nominees put together, is somehow soft on child porn, is a conspiracy theory. And it has been debunked by everyone who has done fact checking. They were just arguing about the question of whether the Republicans on the committee had access to probation recommendations versus these kind of pre-sentence investigation reports. And all of this, again, the point of these hearings is supposed to be, is the nominee qualified for this job? And what will be their judicial philosophy and their way of ruling on cases at the Supreme Court? There's no indication that the Supreme Court will be sentencing any child pornographers. So the idea that they've kind of captured these hearings by talking so thoroughly about child pornography. And again, the Democrats are trying to redirect. Senator Hirono did an amazing job talking about 40% of judges' downward departures in child pornography, partly because Congress hasn't done the work of actually being clear on there's a huge difference in sex offenses that are covered under the statute. But it is, I think, important for all the viewers to note that this charge against Judge Jackson is absolutely false and should not be allowed to capture these hearings.
And then to sit there and, how dare you call this an attack? Well, that's what the hell it is, Tanya.
Yes, the manner in which the questions were asked, the nature of the questions that are asked, they're looking for a needle in a haystack, and there's nothing there. I agree with my co-panelists. She has demonstrated the skill set that is required for one to be a Supreme Court justice. She is highly qualified. She has described in great detail a thoughtful approach to decision making that is appropriate. And they are trying to distract the viewing audience and also provide some sound bites for the network news tonight to show that there's something here that is outside of the four corners of this woman's distinguished record as a jurist, as a practitioner, and as an American.
The fact that this is the only thing they can seize upon, Damon, I mean, it speaks volumes to for someone to have written nearly 600 opinions, has been the judge for so long. This the best they can do?
Exactly. I mean, this is Pizzagate Redux. I mean, this is exactly what it is, and it is, rather pathetic. It's a distraction. Again, it's not about the nominee. It's not really about her record. It's about making political points. But one thing I do want to lift up in the midst of all of this, let's not lose this, that Judge Jackson's civil rights record is strong. At the Lawyers Committee, we published a report that details our findings about her record. We reviewed it intentionally. And we published a report on our website, lawyerscommittee.org. Everybody can read it, just to show the things that we hold important in our community, the things about the kind of cases we bring in civil rights and racial justice litigation and policy. And so that's what we should really be focused on, not all of these distractions.
Joan, I'll ask you this final question for our legal panel. One, do you believe that Democrats are properly pushing back against the noise of Republicans? Could they be more aggressive? You have the theatrics, obviously, of the folks on the right. You look at Durbin; he is very even tone in terms of how he responds to them. Even you look at, I'll probably say the most aggressive, to be honest, is Sheldon Whitehouse. But also, now we're going to hear from him a little bit later because he's a junior member. I think John Ossoff was very strong yesterday as well. But do you think Democrats have been strong enough in pushing back against the right-wing attacks?
Personally, I believe they are, and this is the reason why. When you listen to the senators, the Democratic senators who are questioning, in their questions, much of what they're giving is commentary to counter what has been presented or the questions asked of the Republicans. So we see that the facts and the data that the distinguished Judge Brown Jackson is not able to provide in her questioning, they are able to provide. So that's one thing. And also even with Senator Durbin, what he did, I thought, was quite good in putting the onus on Congress. If you're really that concerned about child pornography and the guidelines and not getting enough punitive action, then Congress, what are you doing about it? 15 years has passed. What have you done? So I think they are doing an appropriate counter without being overboard, because otherwise, then the Republicans would focus on that and would deflect from what we should be focusing on, the record and the qualifications of a wonderful nominee, someone who should be the next Supreme Court justice.
Joan Bullock, Tanya Washington, Danielle Holly Walker, as well as Damon Hewitt. I appreciate y'all joining us. There's more to watch, so I'm sure all of you will be turning back to these hearings to see what craziness comes out next. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Folks, going to go to a break. We're going to come back for of course, our normal panel. We're going to chat about this as well. We also dip back into the hearing to hear what is being said as they continue the confirmation hearing for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, seeking to become the first African-American woman ever to sit on the United States Supreme Court. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I was in the telephone booth on 63rd and 3rd Avenue
Brought my coins in and dial the number. Mrs. Parks, this is Richard Roundtree. Oh, yeah, yes. Well, you know, it looks like you got the role. I didn't know whether I'll go blind. Oh, really? Okay, well, wait. You can't tell anyone. Can I tell my parents? And I'm walking around town, and my fellow actors and models are saying, hey, you know what? Tree, I think I might have gotten that role. You hear this 2 or 3 different times.
Right. Like, did he come?
Well, wait a minute. Was I dreaming that? Or then Gordon calls me up. I call Gordon, and he says, we're having the press announcing you are the Shaft. I get in the limo, and when I pull up and saw this, oh, Lord. What we used to call, I'm shitting in high cotton.
Yes, in high cotton, yes.
I get out, and all the press is there, and the actors, and I walk in, and Gordon announces, yes, this is Richard Roundtree, and he's gonna play the character Shaft. Magic.
I'm Angie Stone. Hi, I'm Teresa Griffin.
Oh, Roland. Hey, Roland, I am so disappointed that you are not here, first of all. Where's our dance? It's like we get a dance in every time I see you. And so now you're not here for me to dance with, sir. You and your ascot. I need it. I need that in my life right now. Okay, I love you, Roland.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
In certain kinds of decisions, you have to
Live
notice and comment
view of the confirmation hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, day 3. They continue. Let's go live and hear what she has to say.
Was not that the agency couldn't pick 24 months. because obviously Congress had said in the statute you can pick between 0 and 24 months. The claim that was being made is that the agency picked 24 months arbitrarily in violation of Congress's direction about how you go about
The
exercise.
APA was violated?
Yes, the claim was an APA violation. So no one was saying that the statute was violated in the sense that the agency did something that it couldn't have done per the statute, picking 24 months. They said the APA was violated because, this is the claim that they were making,
Sure.
because the agency did no analysis, the agency did no expertise, the agency did not evaluate, okay, if you've been here 6 months, these are the kinds of ties that you have. If you've been here 18 months, right? The agency didn't do anything. Essentially, according to the claimants, the agency heard the president say, we're going to now do 24 months when everybody else, all of the other administrations up to this point.
Because I've only got 2.
Yes, I'm sorry. All right.
What I hear you saying is, tell me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
They didn't follow the APA, in your opinion, which you have to do even though Congress passed the statute?
Well, no, because 2 things. One is the APA under DC, longstanding DC Circuit case law is presumptively applicable to every situation in which an agency is exercising its discretion. So that's the first thing. It's always there as a background rule. So the DC Circuit has said Congress has to be pretty clear when it decides to exclude the APA, when it's saying, I'm giving you discretion, but you can do this arbitrarily, you can do it however you want. And in other places in the immigration statute that sets up expedited removal, Congress says, we are excluding the APA. We're telling you that with respect to this kind of discretion, the APA doesn't apply. So here I had these 2 statutes, and there are canons of statutory interpretation that says that you should try to give effect to all of the will of Congress. You should try to read statutes so that they go together in a way if you have these 2 directives. And there's also DC Circuit case law.
Judge, I got to stop you.
All right.
Because I got
it. and let me just say, I agree that the DC Circuit reversed me. They disagreed with my interpretation, and that's the way that our system works.
Let me ask this last question. This is a question about based on your experience. Can we agree that if, I want to emphasize if, cocaine is cocaine, that crack cocaine is equal in its danger to powdered cocaine? You with me?
I think so.
One is not more dangerous than the other. If that's true, then the sentencing rules ought to be the same. Okay?
It's a policy matter for Congress. You could make them differently if you wanted to.
This is what I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Based on your experience, you've been on the bench a decade.
Yes.
Is crack cocaine more dangerous than powdered or less or the same?
Senator, that's a policy determination. That's what policymakers do. They look at the evidence related to these things and they decide what's more dangerous.
But what have you seen?
I have seen evidence through the Sentencing Commission that the 2 compositions are chemically similar, so similar as to be indistinguishable. And the commission for very many years as a policymaking body indicated its view that they should be equivalent and lobbied Congress concerning that. And Congress made a determination about, in the policy realm, making it 18-1 instead of 100-1, which is what it had previously been.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. And now Senator Padilla.
Mr. Chairman, before I begin, I know you're being very mindful of the clock, so I just want to say I have 2 initial, more substantive questions.
All right, folks, that was some of the hearing. Anytime I have to listen to Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, I can't stand to do so. that fake ass accent of his. Y'all, he never had that accent when he was a Democrat. All of a sudden, he got the homespun country voice. Y'all, that's a fraud. His accent is a flat out fraud. So it's just, it gets on my nerves dealing with him. Speaking of getting on my nerves, oh my goodness, who showed his ass today? Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. He was so sickening and stupid. He got called out not only by Dick Durbin, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. He also got caught up by the former chair of the committee, Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy. Watch this.
You've lived an incredible life, but here's one thing that won't happen to you as we wrap this up. How would you feel that if I'd had a letter from somebody accusing you of something, a crime or misconduct, for weeks, and I give it to Senator Durbin just before this hearing's over, and not allow you to comment on the accusation? How would you feel about that?
Senator, I'm not sure. I don't understand the context of the question.
Well, did you watch the Kavanaugh hearings?
No, sir.
Are you familiar with what happened in the Kavanaugh hearings?
Generally.
Senator, your time is...
Well, please, Mr. Chairman. So, to be honest, it's a minute and 47 seconds. She filibustered every question I had, and she has a right to give an answer, but I'm trying to make a point in 20 minutes. You were here for Kavanaugh. If she's confused about what happened, some people on the other side had an accusation against Judge Kavanaugh that during high school, he sexually assaulted somebody. And the rest is history. That was known to the people on the other side and never revealed during the meetings they had with Judge Kavanaugh. It was literally ambushed. He was ambushed. How would you feel if we did that to you?
Senator, I've appreciated the kindness that each of you has shown me to see me in your offices, to talk with me about my approach.
But my question is, what if during our 15-minute exchange, it was very pleasant? You're a very nice person. You have a lot to be proud of. I would never do that to you. If I had some information that's sketchy at best, that somehow you've done something wrong, I promise you, just from human decency, I would share it with you. I would not disclose it at the last minute of the last day of the hearing, and I've already given it to a newspaper so the whole country can read about it before you ever said a word.
Senator, she's had nothing to do with the cause.
No, but I'm asking her about how she may feel about what y'all did.
Senator, your time has expired, and I'm going to give her an opportunity to finally complete an answer.
So, if I could
just
address,
answer the question.
Senator, I don't have any comment on what procedures took place in this body regarding
What'd you think about the Kavanaugh hearing?
What I'd like to answer is your points about my sentencings in child pornography cases. The point of the guidelines is to assist judges in determining what punishment to provide in cases. And there are horrible cases, but the idea is that between the range of punishment that Congress has prescribed, judges are supposed to be providing proportional punishment based on what a person has done.
It was going well until this last round of questioning, and that's an abrogation of everything the Senate should stand for. You had a Republican member who went way over the time allotted to him, ignored the rules of the committee, badgered the nominee, would not even let her answer the questions. I've never seen anything like that. I've been here 48 years. Here we have a highly respected and respectable nominee, and to be treated that way. I don't know what the motivation might be, what political motivation is, but to see the badgering of this woman as she's trying to testify, I thought was outrageous.
All right, but then, of course, you had to deal with this idiot, Ted Cruz, talking about badgering. Watch this fool.
So yesterday, under questioning from Senator Blackburn, you told her that you couldn't define what a woman is, that you were not a biologist, which I think you're the only Supreme Court nominee in history who's been unable to answer the question, what is a woman? Let me ask you, as a judge, how would you determine if a plaintiff had Article III standing to challenge a gender-based rule, regulation, policy, without being able to determine what a woman was?
So, Senator, I know that I'm a woman. I know that Senator Blackburn is a woman, and the woman who I admire most in the world is in the room today, my mother. It sounded as though the question was...
But let me ask, under the modern leftist sensibilities, if I decide right now that I'm a woman, then apparently I'm a woman. Does that mean that I would have Article III standing to challenge a gender-based restriction?
Senator, to the extent that you are asking me about who has the ability to bring lawsuits based on gender, those kinds of issues are working their way through the courts, and I'm not able to comment on them.
Okay, if I can change my gender, if I can be a woman, and then an hour later, if I decide I'm not a woman anymore, I guess I would lose Article III standing. Tell me, does that same principle apply to other protected characteristics? For example, I'm an Hispanic man. Could I decide I was an Asian man? Would I have the ability to be an Asian man and challenge Harvard's discrimination because I made that decision?
Senator, I'm not able to answer your question. You're asking me about hypotheticals and
Well, I'm asking you how you would assess standing if I came in and said, I have decided I identify as an Asian man.
I would assess standing the way I assess other legal issues, which is to listen to the arguments made by the parties, consider the relevant precedents and the constitutional principles involved, and make a determination.
All right, y'all. Let's go to my panel, please. Joining us right now is Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Cliff, glad to have you here. Also, Renee Hutchins also joins us as well. Renee McDonald Hutchins with the University District of Columbia. We also have A. Scott Bolden, Robert Patillo, and we'll be joined shortly by Monique Presley as we break all of this down. Renee, I want to start with you. I mean, if we thought yesterday was stuck on stupid, having to listen to that idiot John Kennedy, and then having to listen to Marsha Blackburn, Tom Cotton, Josh Hawley, and Lindsey Graham. I mean, seriously, Lindsey, let it go. Kavanaugh's on the Supreme Court. This ain't part two, dude. I mean, what did you make of just the insanity from the right today?
It was remarkably frustrating. Watching today's hearings was remarkably frustrating. It felt at times less like a serious vetting of somebody who is being considered for lifetime appointment to the court, and more like political candidates looking for opposition research on their opponent so that they could take her down. It was remarkably frustrating, and Senator Booker, I think, channeled that frustration of all of us when he spoke directly to Judge, soon to be Justice, let's be clear, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and told her that she was his North Star, that she was the harbinger of hope, that this country continues to get better and better, and because of her, it will get better still.
In fact, I want to actually play some of what Senator Cory Booker had to say, because it really was important, an important moment in today's confirmation hearings. So, folks, if y'all could go ahead and play what Booker had to say.
Thank you very much, Judge. After me, only 5 to go. But sit back for a second, because I don't have questions right away. I actually have a number of things I just want to say, because this has been not a surprise. Given the history that we all know, not a surprise, but perhaps a little bit of a disappointment, some of the things that have been said in this hearing. The way you have dealt with some of these things, that's why you are a judge and I am a politician, because you have sat with grit and grace and have shown us just extraordinary demeanor during the times where people were saying things to you that are actually out of the norm. I had to go up dais to ask some of my more senior colleagues about what I feel like is a dangerous precedent. People are taking 1,000 cases you've been over, is that right? I'm sorry, I said you wouldn't ask you questions, but just give me a...
Something like that.
Something like that. And from what I understand is that these cases often take days, weeks, sometimes months, right?
To decide in a case,
yeah.
yes.
There's a trial sometimes. And the folks are taking any of those cases and just trying to pick pieces out. And so my colleague, Senator Hawley, has been doing this all into the lead up and saying things, tweeting things that I think that a lot of us, when I was just trying to get some advice here, is this is what the new standard is going to be. That any judge coming before us that has ever chosen outside of the sentencing guidelines, below the sentencing guidelines, we're creating this environment now where I could make myself the hero of people who have been victims of some horrible crime and suddenly put whatever judge I want on the defensive by trying to drag out little bits when they have no context to the case. None of the facts. They're seeking to exploit the complexities of a criminal justice system, the reason why we have a third branch of government. I feel bad that there was a judge mentioned by name in this hearing that's from Senator Hawley's state. What is that judge going to think next time they have a complicated sexual abuse case that comes before them, and they know that they could possibly be called out if they go below the sentencing guidelines, which I showed you yesterday in my lack of chart. If you remember, I was uncharted. But that you are deciding completely in the norm. 70+% in many states of people are doing just like you did. But I'm a Democratic senator. I've never quoted from this very well-respected conservative periodical. This is the National Review. Very well-respected. They're not necessarily something I agree with all the time. But here's what the National Review, this is the title. Senator Hawley's disingenuous attack against Judge Jackson's record on child pornography. I'll just read the first paragraph. I would oppose Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson because of her judicial philosophy for the reasons I outlined last week. I addressed that in a separate post. For now, I want to discuss the claim by Senator Josh Hawley that Judge Jackson is appallingly soft on child pornography offenders. This is the kicker here. The allegations appear meritless to the point of demagoguery. I got letters from leaders of victims' rights groups, survivors of assault, all saying sort of the same thing with the National Review. Feel proud about yourself. You brought together right and left in this calling out of people that will sit up here and try to pull out from cases and try to put themselves in a position where they're the defenders of our children, to a person who has children, to a person whose family goes out in streets and defends children. I mean, this is a new low. And what's especially surprising about this is it didn't happen last year.
Scott, were you embarrassed that supposedly these are the best that America has to offer, these United States senators?
I think demagoguery is a great term for it. I actually thought her judicial record is fair game. And I thought in the first day, in the first round, when the Republicans started looking at her record, I thought, okay, fair game. She handled herself well. I thought the second day and the third day and the continuing pounding and rudeness in the face of her class and in the face of her demeanor was really offensive. Then I got offended at it because you remember the Republicans promised on the first day that this was not going to be a political clown show. And by the third day, the Republicans you name, Hawley and Cruz and others, who have a reputation for being strong, well-educated lawyers, just took it to a whole nother level. But remember, they're not playing to the judge getting the votes. They know they can't stop that. They're playing to this social war and to their base and to running for office. And they turned into a clown show. And so those were my observations.
I was looking at your tweets, Cliff Albright, and you were, let's just say, a wee bit agitated at what you witnessed the last couple of days.
Yeah, Roland, just a wee bit, and the tweet you're talking about is that, we have to keep in mind, not only were these clowns, not only were these racists being ridiculous because they're really auditioning for the presidency, right?
Exactly.
An audition, which by the way, in order to get that, they're going to have to go past somebody who is a repeated serial sex offender, who for 4 years they gave unabashed allegiance to in the White House and never had an issue with him. If they were so concerned about, at one point Lindsey Graham tried to compare the treatment that they were giving to Judge Brown Jackson to the treatment that Kavanaugh received. In other words, he's more concerned, and the rest of them are more concerned about the way that she gave sentencing to child pornographers, but we're absolutely fine with ignoring the fact that they had an accused child pornographer that they literally put on the highest court in the country, because Kavanaugh was the same age as one of those cases that Hawley kept harping on, where the person was 18 years old. Kavanaugh was 18, and in fact, 18 for just one, because keep in mind, there were two that Kavanaugh had, one where he was in college, right? And so they're more concerned with how she's sentencing on child pornographers and sex offenders than the fact that they voted for one to the Supreme Court, they gave allegiance to another while he was in the White House. And truth be told, if they're that concerned about child pornography, all Hawley or Cruz has to do is go out that chamber, go down the hall to the House, where two of their colleagues, Getz and Jim Jordan, are sitting, who both have direct connections to child pornography, but they're not going to do that. If they're that concerned about the sentencing guidelines, either one of them could pass something in regards to the sentencing guidelines, but they're not going to do that. What this is about is that they are trying to tarnish a Black woman, and in doing so, going back to the tweet that you mentioned, they are actually referencing and using one of the oldest tropes, one of the oldest stereotypes that we've had in this country, which is the trope of a Black woman as the Jezebel, as the over-sexualized. They are literally trying to present a case that somehow she has an affection or support or an advocacy for child pornography. That is very much in line with the images, right? That is very much in line with the image that they tried to create of Black women during slavery, even before slavery, but especially during slavery, because that's the way that they rationalized the fact that they were systematically raping Black women in this country. They created that image in order to justify it, in order to give the appearance that they wanted. They are using that same imagery, that same trope, on this highly accomplished and disciplined. And I don't know how she's sitting through it. I'm sitting at my TV trying to throw stuff at the TV. If for nothing else, she needs to be concerned. She needs to be confirmed just because she had the courage to sit through cowardly attacks from these two people, or more than two, from all of these people who are nothing but cowardly racists.
Right. Robert Patillo, your assessment.
Well, it's interesting to me the fact that you have these individuals who claim that they are interested in vetting this this woman for the highest court in the land, but at the same time, They did nothing at all when you had somebody accused of 26 to 27 sexual assaults in the White House. As was just mentioned by Cliff, you have Gates and Jordan in the House of Representatives. And think about the accusations they've made against Judge Brown Jackson. One, that she's somehow soft on child pornographers. Yesterday, they insinuated that she was sympathized with terrorists at Guantanamo Bay. Ted Cruz insinuating that she somehow, as a black woman, is going to bring CRT and critical race theory into the and make that the law of the land. So much so that the Republican National Committee tweeted out that her name equaled CRT. They're not even faking it anymore. It's not even dog. I keep hearing mainstream media talking about dog whistles. This isn't a dog whistle. This is just straight up old-fashioned racism. They would never imagine if Judge Brown Jackson broke down the way that Kavanaugh did and started foaming at the mouth and cussing and spitting and banging the table, those sorts of things. They're trying their best to get a moment like that, and she's been masterful at making sure that she keeps a calm demeanor. This does not fall for any of their traps. These people should be ashamed of themselves. As Senator Leahy said, they've broken all of the last even perceptions of decorum that once existed. And I think it is very clear that they are a desperate place where they are trying to play to the most far right-wing conspiracy theory parts of the Republican Party. I mean, even farther right than the MAGA groups. These are the QAnon conspiracies about Democrats drinking babies' bloods and having pedophile rings, those sorts of things. This is the part of the Republican Party they're trying to play to, and we have to call them out for it and ensure that in the next election, one of those people is not on the ballot, because the potentiality of somebody like that going into the White House could be even more dangerous than President Trump was.
You know, is Monique there? All right, let me know when she's on. Renee, they kept trying to come back to this whole issue of child pornography. I mean, they have nothing else. They literally have nothing else. Even when we played that coming live, the video going to Sarah John Kennedy, he's talking about powder cocaine, crack cocaine, and she's like, I'm sorry, that's your job. The fact of the matter is, Congress can actually make it the same, whether it's powder cocaine or crack cocaine. I mean, it used to be 100 to 1, then it was reduced to 10 to 1. It still should be changed. Don't be looking at her. Do your damn job, Senator Kennedy.
One of the things that I just applaud soon-to-be Justice Jackson for, and I'm going to keep saying that because we are going to speak it into existence, because it is going to happen. One of the things that I absolutely have to applaud her for is she has been masterful at reminding the Senate of what their job is and what the limits on her power as a judge are. It has been a masterclass in endurance, and it is not just the trope of black woman as Jezebel that they are attempting to trigger. Some of these political stunts and character attacks, it seems, have been an intentional effort to trigger an angry reaction from her, much like Kavanaugh's reaction, so that they can then complain that she is an angry black woman who does not have the judicial demeanor to sit on the court, and she is not biting. It is a masterclass in endurance.
You know, it was just this one after the other, and it was important. It was important, Scott, for her to say, that's your job. You can change that. You can fix that. So I love it how they whine about judicial activism, but don't want to accept the role that they play in dealing with a lot of these laws.
Yeah, that's pretty clear. But this is what happens when you run up against excellence, Roland. When average white men of power, whether elected or appointed, or rather rooted in privilege, when you run up against excellence, who happens to be an African-American woman, you see, they couldn't stand the scrutiny that they're putting her through. I've done a lot on the federal sentencing guidelines, over 30 years of practicing law. Their job is to either appoint, delegate, or draft what the federal sentencing guidelines are, which are advisory. If you were to look in their record of who they've represented, let alone look at mine over 35 years, prosecutor and criminal defense lawyer, right? and you could scrutinize my clients as white-collar criminal defendants. I've represented child pornographers and prosecuted them, as well as those who were pedophiles, prosecuted and defended them. But they know that as a lawyer, you can't scrutinize the lawyer's record because there's a constitution that says everyone's entitled to a lawyer. And so it's really unfair in that regard, too, whether you're looking at her opinions or looking at who she's defended over the years. At one point, they were criticizing her representing Guantanamo defendants, but she was an associate at a big law firm. Associates don't have a right to say yes or no to who they're going to defend. That's the partner's call. And so she was just contributing. And so the whole analysis to score points with their base is really what this is about. The other thing they're trying to do is they were trying to limit how many other Republicans who are going to support her. At last count, I think it's 5, maybe 10 that are going to support her no matter what. But it's hard to oppose excellence. And that's what we've seen the last 2 or 3 days, just really excellence in every way.
Well, and Cliff, I really do hope, and I say this over and over and over again till I'm blue black in the face. For the people out there who whine and complain, who do not understand the importance of voting, I hope you see what happened when you don't turn out and elect Beto O'Rourke and we get Ted Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
And you listen to the silliness of Tom Tillis. We could put Sherry Beasley in the U.S. Senate, and so she would be asking those questions. You got, of course, races in Wisconsin, Ohio. We can get rid of Marco Rubio, put in Val Demings. For people who are saying what I heard today and yesterday and Monday is nonsensical, you can remove U.S. senators from power. Cliff?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Roland. I mean, if we just think about what we've seen in this hearing and then in some related interviews and discussions that have taken place this week, in this hearing, they have challenged Obergefell, dealing with same-sex marriage. They've obviously they got their sights set on Roe versus Wade, and reproductive justice. There's a number of, they even, one senator, not in this hearing, but in related comments, was recorded basically saying that the Loving decision, which was the decision that got rid of miscegenation laws and enabled us to have interracial marriages, saying that needs to be overturned. This is what they have on their agenda if they get control of the nominating process, the confirmation process for the Supreme Court. It is already out of balance, and it will be out of balance even more so with even more extreme judges, and not just at the Supreme Court level. We know the impact of what happens when you fill the pipeline of federal judges leading up to the Supreme Court. This is real stuff. Like these are real rights that we take for granted that are not guaranteed. And if we don't come out and vote, and if we don't deal with this Senate, not to mention all the other issues that we need Senate action on, including voting rights, right? But these are real, people like to talk about bread and butter issues, who you're able to marry and where you're able to go to school and whether or not you've got reproductive, that's just as important as the rate of inflation, right? These are real rights that affect our daily lives. In some cases, they are actually matters of life or death. And this is what's at stake if we don't come out and vote and impact what this Senate looks like moving forward for at least the next couple of years and beyond. We have got to come out and take these Senate races seriously, as well as all the other races that are on the ballot up and down the ticket.
Robert, Senator John Ossoff is on this panel. He, of course, won a 6-year term. Bottom line is this here: Georgia got to have a massive turnout to get Senator Raphael Warnock reelected. Elections have their consequences, and people need to understand the United States senators are the ones who are going to vote to confirm federal judges. So people cannot act like these issues are not related.
Absolutely. And just remember, if it wasn't for the massive turnout here in Georgia in January of last year, you wouldn't have a majority for Democrats on that panel. You will not be able to move through a Judge Jackson to becoming Justice Jackson without that type of turnout. And if you want to see, instead of having John Ossoff on that panel, somebody like a Herschel Walker, they're asking questions, they're trying to put sentences together. That's what happens if you don't turn out to vote. They already elected Tommy Tuberville in Alabama, who was competing with Marshall Blackburn to be the dumbest senator in the history of the United States Senate. And then when you think they're winning, then Ted Cruz, who we know isn't dumb, tries to do a dumb person impression to get as dumb as them. We are racing to the bottom on that side of the aisle. They're in a media silo where they only listen to the different conspiracy theories from their own side of the aisle and have lost complete sight of the needs of the American people. Do you think there's any single mother sitting at home trying to put bills together, trying to figure out whether or not this justice is soft on terrorism in Guantanamo 10 years ago? That doesn't even make sense. So they're no longer operating from a point of view of trying to actually address things that the American people care about. It's a small cadre on the far right that wins these elections, the donor base of those millionaires and billionaires that fund their campaigns. That's who they are appealing to. And because of that, we have to make sure we turn out with people power so we can keep them out of office, because who knows at this point in time what public policy they would put in place if they actually had the majority again.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin unfiltered video in just one moment.
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches! Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on that.
Stay black. I love y'all. I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?
Over the last 3 days, we've heard over and over again, as we should, about the incredible qualifications that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has to serve on the Supreme Court. And I know I've touted them each and every day of this hearing myself. Hopefully you've seen me do it if you've been watching the hearings. And I'm going to do it again here in a minute. But before I do, I want to explain why I'm doing it, why I keep doing it. It's because I do believe every American should should know Ketanji Brown Jackson, the judge, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the person, and the fact that she represents the very best of our country.
All right, folks, the confirmation hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson ended today after 22 hours. But the one moment, I dare say, now granted, we had, in the words of Senator Ben Sass, a lot of jackasses showing themselves on the committee. We're going to show you what he had to say about that. But I dare say the moment that people are still talking about, especially black women. Now, yesterday, of course, we were getting ready for the show. Spike Lee was interviewing me for the Colin Kaepernick interview. I was not watching the hearings yesterday, so I actually missed that critical moment when Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, when he spoke for so many African Americans, but especially black women who were watching these hearings, who were watching the attacks on this sister, evoking in many ways the same way the white Southern Dixiecrats were attacking Thurgood Marshall in 1967 during his confirmation hearings. When Senator Cory Booker, when he spoke up, when he laid out this moment, and it reached the point where Judge Brown, when she had to grab some tissue, and she had to actually wipe away tears as she listened to Senator Cory Booker express his thoughts in that particular moment. It was amazing. So many people were tweeting the video out back and forth. They were showing it. They were just speaking to it. So folks, let's go ahead and play it.
Thank you very much, Judge. After me, only 5 to go. But sit back for a second, because I don't have questions right away. I actually have a number of things I just want to say, because this has been not a surprise, given the history that we all know, not a surprise, but perhaps a little bit of a disappointment, some of the things that have been said in this hearing. The way you have dealt with some of these things, that's why you are a judge and I am a politician, because you have sat with grit and grace and have shown us just extraordinary demeanor during the times where people were saying things to you that are actually out of the norm. I had to go up dais to ask some of my more senior colleagues about what I feel like is a dangerous precedent. People are taking 1,000 cases you've been over, is that right? I'm sorry, I said you wouldn't ask you questions, but just give me
something like that.
Something like that. And from what I understand is that these cases often take days, weeks, sometimes months, right?
To decide in a case, yes.
There's a trial sometimes. And folks are taking any of those cases and just trying to pick pieces out. And so my colleague, Senator Hawley, has been doing this all into the lead up and saying things, tweeting things that I think that a lot of us, when I was just trying to get some advice here, is this is what the new standard is going to be. That any judge coming before us that has ever chosen outside of the sentencing guidelines, below the sentencing guidelines, we're creating this environment now where I could make myself the hero of people who have been victims of some horrible crime and suddenly put whatever judge I want on the defensive by trying to drag out little bits when they have no context to the case. None of the facts. They're seeking to be America again. The land that never has been yet, but yet must be the land where everyone is free. Oh, yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, but I swear this oath, America will be. That is the story of how you got to this desk, you and I and everyone here, generations of folk who came here and said, America, I'm Irish. You may say, no, Irish or dogs need to fly, but I'm going to show this country that I can be free here. I can make this country love me as much as I love it. Chinese Americans first forced into near slave labor, building our railroads, connecting our country, saw the ugliest of America, but they were going to build their home here and say, America, you may not love me yet, but I'm going to make this nation live up to its promise and hope. LGBTQ Americans, from Stonewall women to Seneca, Hidden figures who didn't even get their play until some Hollywood movie finally talked about them and how they were critical for us defying gravity. All of these people loved America. And so you faced insults here that were shocking to me. Well, actually not shocking. But you are here because of that kind of love. And nobody's taken this away from me. So you got 5 more folk to go through. 5 more of us. And then you can sit back and let us have all the debates. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a well-charted Senate floor because it's not going to stop. They're going to accuse you of this and that. Heck, in honor of your person who shares your birthday, you might be called a communist. But don't worry, my sister. Don't worry. God has got you. And how do I know that? Because you're here. And I know what it's taken for you to sit in that seat.
There's a lot more that he said. We're going to play a little bit more of that later. That was an unbelievable moment. Joining me right now is Reverend Leah Daughtry. She's the former DNC CEO, campaign manager for Fighting for Our Vote. Brown Lewis, Dean, North Carolina Central University. Wade Henderson is the interim president and CEO of Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Also, Reese Colbert, Black Women Views, regular panelist on Thursday. And of course, Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. Leah, I will start with, actually, I'm gonna start with you, Brown. As that was playing, it appeared as if you were wiping away tears from your eyes.
Yes, I was. I've watched it before, but it continues to be emotional because I know the journey that she's taken to get here, because we've all taken similar journeys. And so it's just such an emotional time. So there are tears of promise, tears of hope, but also tears of remembrance of what we've been through historically.
Leah, I dare say that was the finest moment to date of Senator Cory Booker's career as a United States Senator representing New Jersey. That moment.
You know, it was when he opened his mouth and began to speak and invoked Constance Baker Motley and Langston Hughes and Harriet Tubman, and really just gave Judge Jackson some wind beneath her wings. I think he was not speaking just for himself, but really he was speaking for all of us. I had the opportunity to attend the hearings and to be in the room when the junior senator from Texas, Mr. Cruz, began with his diatribe, his shenanigans. And, you know, sitting there, there's nothing you can do. The feeling of helplessness as you watch this eminently qualified sister who has put herself forward to serve this nation be undercut, undermined, diminished, and demeaned, and you sit there proud of her, but with a feeling of helplessness because there's nothing you can do. And so Senator Booker finally steps forth in his last pass at this and speaks what we all wanted to hear, what we all needed to hear, what we all wanted to say, particularly as a Black woman. You brother standing up and say, I support you, sis. I see you, I support you, and I'm with you, was just so deeply gratifying and moving. I think I myself cried through his 20 minutes of speaking because it was just such a needed moment. And you could see from her face that she needed that moment. She appreciated it as well.
Reese, there were, the number of sisters who I saw on social media commenting and moved to tears was just amazing. And folks who were saying they saw it over and over and over again. Because frankly, for many folks of this generation, we weren't even alive when Thurgood Marshall went through his hearings. I'm not wasting my time on Clarence Thomas. But this was absolutely different because for Thurgood Marshall, he was the first African American. For Judge Brown Jackson, the first African American female. And that really, I think, also why that moment was critically important.
Absolutely. I mean, we have to claw and scrape our way into any position that we get, and it's painful. And what Senator Booker did in that moment was he elevated not just Judge Brown Jackson, but all Black women. I mean, the women that he invoked, Constance Baker Motley, Harriet Tubman, his own mother, Black women throughout our history. We have a rich legacy of Black women being trailblazers. And as he pointed out, they certainly didn't get there by having a hand out, but what he did is he gave her a hand up in that situation. And, Republicans live in the gutter, they live in the mud. And I'm, for one, all for getting down and dirty with them and throwing some punches around. But what we really needed in that moment was to elevate her in a way that gave her the honor of this really magnificent position. The Supreme Court is one of the most prestigious appointments that one can have. It's one that has eluded Black women throughout the entire history of this country. And so she deserved that gravitas. She deserved that support. And she deserved that unequivocal backing in a way that really just showed that she earned the right to be there with dignity. She didn't have to sit there through all of those indignities and being debased and berated for hours so that people can get their sound bites for Fox News or OAN or for their primary campaigns or for the midterms. She's better than that. And I think that moment presented her with that opportunity to really relish in the accomplishment that she had just by being there. And I think it was a reminder for Black people everywhere that, I think we're starting to get to the point where we take for granted these historic firsts. Not everybody, obviously, older generations are much more in tune with the significance of this. But I think in this kind of, popcorn society that we have, we're always moving on to the next story. The significance of this moment kind of gets lost. So I salute Senator Booker for giving her that gift, but for giving us that gift as well.
Wade Henderson, I'll go to you next. And I got no problem saying this. I think all too often, we as men, including Black men, do not fully appreciate nor understand the reality of what Black women have to go through in this society. When we think, I was traveling back from New York City yesterday after attending a conference for minority football coaches. Brian Flores and others were there, and then sitting with Spike Lee for the Colin Kaepernick documentary that he's working on. When we think about our history, and actually when I was traveling back, I was watching Selma in our Sprinter, and even when I think about that, sure, we could talk about Amelia Boynton and Annie Cooper, but the reality is, Diane Nash represented in that film, but the reality is, in our history, Black women have, especially the Black freedom movement, even before that and after, Black women have often been erased, not centered, not held up, when the reality is there ain't no movement without Black women, and so then or now. And so brothers need to fully understand why a Senator Cory Booker needed to affirm this sister in that setting last night.
Mm-hmm. Roland, let me say I'm honored to be on tonight's program. The women who are on tonight's program have so eloquently stated the challenge that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson faced in yesterday's hearing. And indeed, Senator Booker's moment was not just powerful, it was transcendent. It really was. What made the circumstance so powerfully tragic is that in Ketanji Brown Jackson, you have perhaps, really not perhaps, you have the most well-qualified individual ever presented to serve on the United States Supreme Court. Her credentials are unparalleled. So, we know that she graduated from both Harvard College and Harvard Law School with honors in both instances. Clerked for 3 judges, a district court judge, Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court. Served as a public defender. Served as a commissioner on the Sentencing Commission. Her record is unparalleled. There is no other member of the court currently, or that we can think of, whose credentials were more extensive than hers. And yet she suffered the slings and arrows of demagogic criticism, criticism with no basis in substance, but was whipped up into a frenzy of froth for entirely political purposes, and in so doing degraded her at really her finest hour. And she was forced to sit stoically and listen to these criticisms and to have that couched under the guise of judicial temperament. It was a powerful moment. And Cory Booker's comments were cathartic. And that's why people cried, not just women. Men were touched by this as well. But as you said, Roland, I think, as a Black man, it's certainly important for all of us to recognize what this moment represents, not just to Black women, but to the nation. And the qualifications that Judge Jackson presents to the country as a whole is something that deserves to be lifted up and celebrated as the best of what America represents. She should be confirmed near unanimously. But the truth is, she'll be fortunate to get one, no more than two, Republican votes on her confirmation. And yet I am confident that even if she does not get one Republican vote, she will be confirmed. I think her presentations over the 3 days of these hearings have demonstrated time and time again why she should be confirmed, and that her qualifications are exceedingly superb, and that she really represents the best of what this country symbolizes. And as the nation's first Black woman to serve on the United States Supreme Court, we should all be honored to participate in this moment.
Greg, it's interesting to listen to conservatives complain, saying, "Oh, Joe Biden, he stopped the first Black woman who could have been on the Supreme Court, Janice Rogers Brown. He filibustered her." When in reality, you heard what Senator Cory Booker said last night. No, Constance Baker Motley could have easily been the first, and he said, remember, they called her a communist. And watching Judge Brown Jackson this week, watching her poise, watching her have to sit there and endure the lies. And again, what Republican Ben Sass said, the jackass behavior of people on his side. Again, I really thought about that scene. There was a particular scene from Selma that to me is one of the greatest scenes, when the Coretta Scott King character, played by Carmen Ejugo, was actually talking to Lorraine Toussaint, who was playing Amelia Boynton. And Boynton said this, and again, when I saw it, I said, this speaks exactly what we witnessed this week from this sister. You are already prepared.
Know what I can contribute at this moment. I'm grateful to you and to Black Star Network for giving us space. We taped a piece today with Angie Porter and Blethia Watkins, two professors, law professors, in Angie's case, for airing tomorrow on the confirmations. I'm a little conflicted. I mean, only seen Selma once, that movie, in part because one of the criticisms which I share, is the mistreatment of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in that moment. But of course, it's always good to see Amelia Boynton Robinson portrayed there. Her son, of course, is the Boynton in Boynton versus Virginia. He was a student at Howard Law School at the time. And so watching Cory Booker, I watched him just before I went to class last night. I have class at the law school, and we talked about his comments. And what I saw was, and then again today in class with my undergraduate students, so my law students and my undergraduate students, one of the law students was actually in the room yesterday watching. And it was very interesting to hear young people filter Brother Booker's comments. The enthusiasm, yes. The support for the sister, yes. All of that. At the same time, we have to remember we're in a political formation. So I don't know whether he was giving a campaign speech, and certainly Harriet Tubman is not an American at the time. She was a criminal. She's a fugitive from federal law. But Cory Booker's almost Santa Claus construction of what America is, and I understand why he did it, and I think he does believe that. But it runs the risk of using that time, perhaps even as he continued to praise our sister Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson, by the way. Her middle name is a Yoruba name. And while she has maintained her composure brilliantly, she has also been speaking through her gestures, through her pauses, through those consonants she's been clipping. If you speak Ebonics, she has been giving it to them the whole week. It's actually been glorious to watch. But Booker, you know, it's interesting because I felt conflicted in listening to young people talk about how they looked at it. Everything from, you know, the idea that somehow she has to justify who she is. We keep saying she's qualified, she's qualified, she's qualified. Nothing she could do will qualify her to these white nationalists. Brett Kavanaugh got up there and snotted and snorted. He went to Georgetown Day. And remember, Ted Cruz tried to take her out talking about CRT, the same Georgetown Day that white man went to. They were never going to vote for her. There's no amount of saying you're qualified. No, this is going to prepare you. This is going to help you. Remember, James Eastland, as you've talked about many times, he drug Constance Baker Motley's nomination out for months in 1966 when she was nominated to the federal bench for the Southern District of New York. And I'm bringing all this up as a background to the point I'm about to make. We should pause and celebrate our brother Cory Booker for saying what he said. And we also have to balance that with being very clear-eyed in this intellectual warfare we're on, because while he was doing that, the Supreme Court that Ketanji Brown Jackson is about to be on handed down a per curiam decision yesterday that cut a black district in the Milwaukee area because the criminal enterprise known as the Wisconsin State Legislature has gone completely out of its mind. The Wisconsin Supreme Court stepped in, and the damn Supreme Court of the United States intervened in a state issue. These people are out of control. If you don't understand white supremacy, everything else you think you understand will only confuse you. And while we continue to say that this sister, who is eminently qualified, we also have to balance that with disabusing ourselves of this aspirational backmapping of this fantasy we think of as American values. There is no such thing. We have to be clear-eyed about that. So I can't wait for her to get on the bench. And then we'll see who Ketanji Brown Jackson is, because nobody can predict what a Supreme Court justice will do, will write, will think until they get on the bench. So I'm just ready for this vote. Take this vote. Let these white boys do what they were going to do from day one. And then let's get down to brass tacks. And Clarence Thomas, get well soon as you retire from whatever illness has your ass in the hospital at home recuperating. And maybe it'll push you to consider coming off the bench. Then we're going to see who they really are, because then they're going to have a real fight, because this one is theater at this point.
But Brown, this is the dichotomy that we actually face, and that is we have to wear both masks. The reality is this: she could say what we want to say, but she got to get confirmed. And the reality is, Senator Cory Booker is operating in an institution where it's just other people look like him. And one is a Republican who frankly votes against everything that he actually believes in. And that's Senator Tim Scott. And so for all of our desire to do a Colin Kaepernick, the reality is, if you read I Never Had It Made by Jackie Robinson, Robinson didn't want to go through all the stuff that he had to go through, but he also understood why he was going through it. And it's very interesting when you read his book, and you can read the fury, the anger, but also understanding it. We still are living in a world, and I say this all the time, where in the last election, 73% of the electorate was white. We're still living in an America that is being defined by, frankly, white standards. And so this week, I think, show that. So even if you do all the things they say you're supposed to do and all the places you're supposed to go, you do all of those things, you still are going to be treated like black folks have always been treated in America. Dean? I think
you're
you
exactly right. And I think that what was really impressive about her is that she handled it in a way that they were saying things that was infuriating, things that were not true. The whole thing about the pornography and the fact that she is being penalized for doing her job. Had she done something different, she'd have been penalized for not doing that. And I think she handled it with so much grace. She controlled her face. Because as Black women, we speak not just with our voices, but with our faces, with our hands, especially our hands. And I think that she did a wonderful job of working within the system. You're right, recognizing that she couldn't say exactly what she thought. She couldn't show what she thought because she has an objective, and that's to get on the Supreme Court to maybe make a difference and maybe make things better for people who look like her. So I really appreciated her calmness, her posture, her temperament, and that she really did not go there with them. And she was polite, even when they were impolite. So I really, really appreciate that. But it goes to your point, what we're saying is that she's reacting to the world in which we still live, where we always always have to prove ourselves. I would have to be careful not to become that angry Black woman, to sustain and control our emotions in such a way. And not necessarily fair, but it was just what it is and what we are now.
Leah, that, as Greg talked about how his students, how they saw it, again, it is the reality of how we have to go through this world. And we can, and I love it when I hear these people. You know, I had somebody who today was whining and crying, and they were criticizing. They were like, you know, you trying to sit here and get money from the government. I said, well, the government spends $1 billion a year in advertising. So what you say, Black-owned media shouldn't get any of the money and the white folks keep getting the money when they get $322 billion being spent every year and we're getting 0.5%? And so you have some people who somehow believe that you could just totally separate yourself from this world. Ain't no reality in that whatsoever. In fact, you can be at a Howard University. They call it the Mecca, but you know what? You still gonna have to go to Capitol Hill and talk to folks when it comes to funding. And so it's getting people to understand that this is still the Black reality in the United States. What we have to endure silently, we know is bullshit. We know folks lying. But you got to sit there and keep a certain look on your face. And inside you cussing them out, but outside you can't say a word.
And you know, that is really the story of our lives as African Americans in this country, where we really have to keep our eyes on the prize and keep the main thing. And we can do a lot and say a lot, but what is the goal? And for many of us, those who believe in the liberation of Black people, we know that there are many routes to that, and we all need to work the route that we are in and work in the rooms that we've been assigned in order to move the liberation of Black people forward. And what you had, the point here, and let's keep the main thing. The point here is to have an African American with her lived experience on the Supreme Court. So sometimes that means you got to hold your tongue, bite your tongue. Somebody else has to say the things that you can't say. But again, the main thing needs to be the main thing. And I think she was smart enough to understand what the goal is and would not let herself be dissuaded or distracted from the goal in order to give a sharp answer or a quick retort to a bunch of people who are, quite frankly, running for president and trying to get their brownie points with their base. So this is the tension that we have as Black people in this country, that we have always had: how to advance ourselves, protect our communities, move our people forward toward liberation while working inside of a system that was not designed for our success. And we've quite frankly exceeded. We got a lot of work to do, and I'm with you, Roland, on getting the money. The money that the government spends is our money. We are taxpayers,
Right.
and we have every right to get the contracts, get the grants, get whatever the government is, because essentially they are giving me back what I have paid in for all these many years. Why should I leave and let the white people spend my money? this is my money too, and I want some of it, and I deserve some of it, and we ought to be able to have the funds apportioned to us in the way that we deserve. And so I don't see what the problem is. It's not either or. We make it an either or. But the fact of the matter is, the only way we're going to be liberated in this country and get what we deserve as God's creation is to have an inside and an outside strategy. And as long as the inside and the outside are communicating, talking, and collaborating, then that's what we need in order to move our people forward.
Wade, I try my best to do what Maya Angelou told me years ago. I didn't see it that way. She did. We were talking, and this was a month before she died, and when she was being celebrated with her portrait, and they had a party for her at the Smithsonian Museum of African Art. And I was interviewing her, and I mentioned my brother and my sister's teacher. She says, "No, you're a teacher." I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "Oh, no." She said, "I watch you. You teach." She said, "Oh, you are a teacher." And so I'm always talking about how we have to rethink our approach to politics. And today, I was going back and forth with some folk, because a week ago I challenged folks who support reparations. I'm like, well, are you going to stand with a brother, Gary Chambers, who's running for a senator in Louisiana? Gary talked about how John Bel Edwards won by 30,000 votes, the gubernatorial race, and how many votes it took. And he said how many unregistered black people there are in Louisiana. And he said, he said, if we get the same number, I could beat Senator John Kennedy. And so I'm watching this hearing, and again, and I'm dealing with these trolls and these people who going back and forth, and I'm sitting there going, don't y'all know that if Gary Chambers beats Senator John Kennedy in November, Senator John Kennedy ain't questioning nobody with his fake accent on the committee? If Sherry Beasley wins in North Carolina, Tom Tillis ain't asking questions on the Judiciary Committee because he's gone. And so I'm sitting here going to the folk, you can't on one hand talk about how Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is getting treated and totally ignore what can happen if you remove and beat two of the very Republicans who are questioning her on the same committee. That they go hand in hand.
Teach, Roland, teach. Let me say, Maya Angelou was correct. You are a teacher. And one of the things that has to be done under these circumstances is to link the lived experiences of the people we're talking about, what they desire most in terms of accomplishing things like police accountability and reform, or voting rights, not simply for the sake of voting rights, but to achieve a more just society than we have currently. It requires people to register and vote. I understand that is not everybody's answer to the problems that we face, but it is certainly one answer, and we have to pursue it. When we were working with organizations like the NAACP, the National Action Network, the Legal Defense Fund, the Urban League, trying to get a voting rights bill passed this year, the leadership of Mark Morial and Reverend Sharpton and Derek and Cheryl Lynn was incredible. And it made a huge difference. But at the end of the day, we did not get that bill passed. And unfortunately, it was two Democrats that stood in the way. The refusal to adjust the filibuster was costly. Now we have states that are controlled by Republican state legislatures and governors enacting a series of new restrictions on voting right access, voter suppression initiatives that are sending us back in time to a period before 1965 when the Voting Rights Act was adopted. We've got to fight back on the ground. And that means registering as many people as possible and encouraging them to turn out with a common purpose. Hopefully, that effort is underway through a number of different organizations. But we also need that effort, given volume by you and others, speaking truth, linking these issues together in ways that people can understand. And that is a challenge, Roland. You have a gift, use it. And I think shows like this are very helpful, and hopefully connecting with people who are not currently part of the system, but could be a real force for change if they were to register and participate.
Brown, you are dean of North Carolina Central. How have your students been, what have they been saying this week watching these hearings?
Well, they've been excited about the way she's handling herself, but they are really shocked about, because for some of them, given their age, this is the first time they've really seen this type of confirmation hearing, because the last one wasn't as aggressive. So they're really, really surprised as to the lack of senility that is going on. But it is also motivating them to what you guys are saying, to get out and support former Justice Beasley in her campaign. And so I think it has invigorated our students. And it also has given them the opportunity to see the reality of how the world really works. Because I think that given their age and the things they've gone through, they don't remember some of the historical things that Senator Booker was talking about. Because even before the debate about critical race theory, a lot of secondary schools and a lot of high schools have started eliminating teaching history about Jim Crow and about slavery, is about racism. So I think that for some students, it was a shock to see the manner in which a Black woman that was so highly credentialed, the way that she's been treated during these hearings.
Which is precisely why, Leah, I need folk to understand, stop thinking this shit's gonna be easy. You need to see, I say this all the time, and I know how people, oh man, I don't wanna see them Jim Crow movies, I don't wanna see them slavery movies, but for me, I mean, literally yesterday, again, I'm in New York, and here I'm sitting right next to Brian Flores, who is suing the NFL of a lack of head coaching opportunities. And DeMaurice Smith is talking about John Mackey being the first the African-American suing the NFL for free agency in 1972 and it taking 20 years. And Curt Flood suing Major League Baseball, going to the Supreme Court, losing, but eventually it actually happening. And walking through that history, and I'm sitting here going, folk, you can't act like this thing always existed the way it did just because you just were born in the last 20 years. And so this generation, whether I'm 53, whether people are 43, 33, or 23, need to see the remnants, the grandchildren of Jim Crow still doing what they do, so folk understand the battle ain't over.
That's exactly right. You know, Chancellor Williams, in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, starts with a story, and the griot sees an old man on the road and said, what happened to the great people of Sumer? They were architects and doctors, and history shows they were a great civilization. And the old man says, well, they lost their history, and so they died. That's the moment we are in. If we don't understand the history of what has happened before, we are ill prepared for what will happen in the future. If you didn't recognize the names that Cory Booker called yesterday, you got some work to do, my sister, my brother, so we can be prepared and understand how to deal with the sons of Jim Crow and the daughters of Jim Crow as we Marsha. This is what we have to do. And if we don't connect those dots, then we will stay in the mud patch, just stomping around in the same place, and we will never be able to move our people forward.
Brown Lewis, Wade Henderson, Leah Daughtry, I appreciate all three of you being with us. Wade, I was going to ask you about what you spoke about today, but don't worry about it. We're going to play the video later. So okay. We'll hear your voice, but we'll play it in real time. I appreciate all three of y'all being here. You're certainly welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Reese and Greg, it was, it still, to me, is just extremely interesting. And Greg, I'm gonna start with you on this one. And frankly, it bothers, it does irk me to no end when people are talking about how do we affect change today, They have no understanding of history. And we sit in these rooms and folk talk about how we going to fix this problem and how we going to do this. And I'm sitting there going, the same way they did then. When I was having the conversation yesterday, and we were talking about these NFL owners who don't want to hire black head coaches, but they get billions from city, county, and state governments. I said, you ever heard of the Powell Amendment? Attach some EEOC standards to receiving publicly financed money. Adam Clayton Powell did it in the 1950s with the education bill of President Dwight Eisenhower. And it continued in the 60s. And I said, tell the New York Black and Puerto Rican caucus to hold up that $1.4 billion they want to give to the billionaire owner of the Buffalo Bills to build a new stadium. And so same thing here. If you watch these hearings and you are mad in Arkansas about Tom Cotton, and if you pissed off in Louisiana about John Kennedy, and if you pissed off about Ted Cruz in Texas, if you mad in Missouri about Josh Hawley, then did you call their office? Did you email? Did you tweet them? Are you going to show up at their town hall? Or are you going to simply express outrage on social media and not do a damn thing? At some point, you got to either get in this game or sit your ass down and be quiet.
Of course, Roland, you're absolutely right. And that is, again, why this platform, this network is so important. We're not engaged in just cheerleading. And let me be very clear from earlier. I think Ketanji Brown Jackson came as close to pitch perfect as you're going to see. So my remarks on Cory Booker were about him, not her. And I wish Cory Booker had been even more eloquent and precise. I think some of his metaphors were quite frankly absurd in terms of these combinations, and it speaks to this point that you're raising here for this reason. These people don't care about facts. You can't appeal to them and call them colleagues like Cory, oh, my friend, my friend. All that rhetoric goes out the window. Do you understand Ben Sass, for all his kind of corn pone, all shucks, is a soft white nationalist? And Josh Hawley was talking to QAnon when he brought up that child porn stuff. That is the Ketanji Brown Jackson that gave 4 years to that white boy that drove up from North Carolina in Pizzagate and threatened to shoot up everybody on Connecticut Avenue. So, of course, her record is unassailable. But what these white men were doing, and I agree with Reverend Daughtry, they are campaigning for 2024. They're auditioning. They were always going to vote against her. Now, what you've put on the table, Roland, is the only thing we need to be discussing when it comes to electoral politics. Register, vote, and get rid of them. Did you see Mike Brown, the Indiana senator that said that perhaps the Supreme Court should have never legalized interracial marriage?
Yeah, Senator Mike Braun.
Mike Braun, yeah, Mike Braun. I'm sorry, I mispronounced.
Right.
Brown.
He said that leave it up to the states, and he was asked about loving. Well, if you want it for this one, you got to do it for all of them. Absolutely.
Exactly. But I'm saying Cory Booker is saying, Judge, when your parents came along, it was illegal for your marriage to. Yes, that's true. But don't then couch that in, but we're better than this. There is no we, brother. You got to energize our people like Gary Chambers is energizing him, in my opinion. And so when you see that, what you're saying, Roland, comes down to we have to be smart. Again, I was going to say this one thing. That's why this forum is important. There are people who have criticized Ketanji Brown Jackson because of this Lockheed Martin case that they're saying, oh, she sold out black women working for Lockheed. No, you need to do some research. When you read that case, and I've read that case and I discussed it with my students, what soon to be Justice Brown Jackson did at the district court level, most of her opinions are at the district court, which is why she gave young Josh Hawley his entire ass lunch. If you watch and understand sentencing guidelines and all the things that were being discussed, she embarrassed Cruz, she embarrassed Hawley and all them. But when you look at that case, what you realize is if she had accepted that settlement, it would have precluded any other black employee at Lockheed for bringing a subsequent suit. So you could argue whether or not she should have allowed the agreement to go forward or not. But she, in effect, preserve the rights of other black people to sue in the future by sacrificing the settlement that this subgroup of black employees that happen to be black women brought in that moment. Now, that's something that legal scholars would argue about. But when people say, well, see, that's evidence she's against black people. No, we got to be smarter than that.
Because they ain't read shit.
They ain't
read a damn thing, just running their mouth.
Running their mouth. And then they say, well, the FOP endorsed her. Noble endorsed her. And then people say, what's Noble? Exactly. Please understand that this woman is going to be on the Supreme Court. This sister is going to be on the Supreme Court, and she's going to be in the minority for the foreseeable future. However, her dissents, her opinions, joining Sonia Sotomayor, now I'm not going to talk about Kagan, but joining Sotomayor, they may well turn into precedents in the future when we get a majority. But you'll never get a majority if your ass doesn't vote, because they are running a Boston on the United States of America right now, and you're not going to fix it by complaining. This is a complex thing. You've got to vote.
See, one of the reasons why I started following Reese, because one, let's just be clear, Reese couldn't have sat in front of that hearing with that face of Judge Brown. I'm just letting y'all know. I mean, they would have had to do some bleeping if Reese was sitting up there. But
yeah.
The thing is, it's breaking these things down for these people who don't read Jack, they don't watch Jack, they don't study Jack. All they do is see a tweet that somebody else posted and they run with it. And it's just like, I love these people here who talking about, oh man, you was sitting here saying if Hillary couldn't dance, she wouldn't get the black vote. I'm like, don't you dumbass know what levity is? The whole room laughed. I said, oh, but you skipped over the whole hour of questions that we had at Claflin University HBCU. I'm like, oh, y'all skipped over that. And see, that's the silliness we're talking about. What Greg just detailed. Yeah, I've had some folks send me those tweets. Man, she screwed over the black employees. But you didn't read it. And that is what we're dealing with. We are dealing with a generation, unfortunately, I'm not labeling everybody, but we're dealing with people who only operate within the 280 characters of Twitter, who only see a meme on Instagram. And if you want to understand, all you got to do is look at time. See, this people need to understand. When we talk about who watches and how they watch and what they do, there's a thing in radio called time spent listening. It's called TSL. With digital, it's called time spent watching. For this show, last year on YouTube, because I love these people who say, oh man, your show's a failure. Really? 92.4 million views last year, 13.6 million watch hours, 1.2 billion impressions and reach. Views from impressions, 56.6 million. Watch hours from impression was 9 billion. But here was the key, 9 million, I'm sorry. But here was the key. Average watch time of a Roland Martin unfiltered video is 8 minutes and 52 seconds. We ain't sitting here trying to give y'all.
We lost you. Did you hear Reese? I didn't hear that.
Was it? Did you say 8 minutes?
Our average watch time on YouTube is 8 minutes and 52 seconds.
Huh.
So when people hit me and go, man, you should be doing shorter videos. No, I'm not trying to sit here and teach your ass in 2 minutes. Because you can't explain every damn thing in 2 minutes. You got to walk people through an understanding, and that's what the deal was. And so when you saw her answering questions, it was like, no, I got to answer your question. You don't quite understand. No, no, Congress should have done this. No, judges can't do that. No, at the district level, I had to follow this. No, that's what it is. It's context and nuance, and the game of the Cruisers and the Harleys and all of them is to see if I can tag you and as Sass, who, punked out, was critical of Trump, but then kissed his ass, went quiet to get his endorsement because he didn't want to fight him, and then criticized him after he won. But he is right. It was a bunch of jackasses trying to make TV, and that's why Ted Cruz was busted looking on Twitter and searching for his own name. Reese, go ahead.
Yeah, but let's be clear, Ben Sass ain't shit either. So fuck him. I don't care if he wanted to call some people out, stating the obvious about Jack Assery. But the problem that we have, and Roland, you said generational, but I would say it's a societal problem that we have. People would rather sound knowledgeable than actually gain knowledge. And so what Republicans did with these performances is they met their folks where they are, which is in the gutter, which is in sound bites, which is in captions, tweets, memes, clips. That's where their people are. And frankly, that's where most people are. And so that's where, to Dr. Carr's point, somebody would pick out the Lockheed Martin case and say, well, she ain't for us, when they don't even understand the details of it. But the devil is in the details. And the details tend to be irrelevant for people once they formed an impression. And so Republicans are really genius at playing this disinformation, misinformation messaging game. And Democrats have a thirst to try to educate people that don't want to learn. They just want to sound smart. They just want to sound like they know stuff. So I think that what Judge Brown Jackson did was really genius. She actually put on a clinic. I learned so much from listening to her. But whatever she said was beside the point for what Republicans were trying to do. And Republicans, to Dr. Carr's point of being clear-eyed, what I heard, it was disturbing. It was it was debasing how they treated Judge Brown Jackson. But what I heard is the next salvo for what they're going for in terms of the midterms, in terms of what they plan to do with power. When we're talking about sentencing and we're talking about cherry picking cases, what kind of chilling effect is that going to have on judges who are looking towards their career?
Hold up. I don't want anybody to skip what you just said.
That's right, Roland.
Because
Come on, Reese.
11 incumbent Democratic judges who supported bail reform in Harris County, Texas, where Houston is, lost in the primary because the police unions endorsed and funded prosecutors who ran against them.
Right. You have Governor Kathy Hochul, who is in New York, who is trying to scale back on some of the bail reforms that have been made there. So what the Republicans always do, the same thing they did with contesting the legitimacy of the elections, is they're always laying the groundwork and the pretext for the next corrupt power grab that they're going to take.
Yes.
And so when they want to talk about soft on crime, hard on crime, when they want to talk about lawlessness and all these other things, what they're doing is they're laying the groundwork to further criminalize, to further incarcerate Black people, because that's who the target always is. Okay, Black people specifically. And when you talk about CRT, saying KBJ equals CRT, no. What they're saying is this is just blatant white supremacy, white nationalism. What they're saying is anything Black is a problem for us by default, period. And so we do have to be, to Dr. Carr's point, clear-eyed about not just the theatrics, but what the theatrics signal. And Democrats in particular, I loved what Senator Booker did. I think we needed that moment just to come up for air. But much of the hearings were completely squandered playing on Republican turf.
There you go.
Yes, you do need... go ahead.
I do want to bring in, before I go to the break, because my next guest had been waiting, I do want to bring in our third panelist, Dr. Larry Walker, assistant professor, University of Central Florida. Doctors, want to get your thoughts on the hearings this week of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
It was political theater. Roland, for us to follow politics, we already knew what was going to happen. The script had already been written. So just watching it play out was essentially watching actors and directors, someone directing a script that had already been written. So I think it was really important. And Reese just talked about Senator Booker's, what he had to say. And, as someone, as a Black man, I was happy to see him defend Judge Brown Jackson the way he did. And for Black folks who have been in churches or on campus or in social events and you're the only Black person, sometimes we give each other things like a head nod. But what he did in terms of the support in front of a national audience, it warmed all our hearts, because we know what it's like to be the only person or be the first one. And we're dealing with all these slings and arrows. But it was great to hear, as obviously the only Black person on the Judiciary Committee, hear Senator Booker give it, and it was passion and the realism, right? Because we've been there before.
Yep.
And then to hear him talk to her about how happy he was and proud of her warmed my heart. And is also the reason why we need more Black folks on the Judiciary Committee.
Absolutely. All right. Hey fam, Patrol Grooming is a Black-owned men's grooming company that delivers on this promise every day to men everywhere. Everything we do, every product we make, is designed to help you to present your best self. It's a promise they've kept since 1991 when they first introduced the Bump Patrol brand, the #1 men's product for a smooth, bump-free shave and silky skin. Millions of customers count on their exceptional skincare products, which can be found at more than 30,000 retail stores in more than 50 countries around the world. Now you can have exceptional beard and skincare products that are as unique as you. Fellas, as we prepare to head back out into the world as COVID restrictions are being lifted, it's time to get our groove back. You can visit patrolgrooming.com to order a Patrol Grooming box, and do this, use the discount code #Roland30. That's #ROLAND30 for a 30% discount at the checkout. We appreciate Patrol Grooming being a partner with us here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network.